2014. Please rise to the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Introduction of members.
I'm Steve Tringali from Millville.
Mike Buckley from Blackstone. Brian Faulkner, Millville.
Morgan McCarthy, Blackstone.
Kathy Robinson, Millville.
Diane Robin, Blackstone.
Wendy Greenstein, Blackstone.
Erin Vanaco, Millville.
Dr. Perry Davis, Superintendent of Schools.
Bill Chaplin, Blackstone. We will go to report of the...
Just if everyone would stand for a moment. Since the last time we met, a longtime employee and certainly a great resident of Millville passed, Mrs. Lorraine Houle, longtime employee in the cafeteria. Thank you.
Our turn. Hurry up.
We
Get over
will
here.
move to report from the student representatives.
Talk about Spirit Week and pep rally.
As Thomas Gallagher arrives. Yeah, good timing.
Well, one thing I can talk about is girls and boys basketball. Since last time we met, we had our holiday tournaments. The boys varsity hosted one at BMR that was made up of 4 teams. I know Mr. Gordy, one of our old gym teachers, his team came and played the boys from Canton. Our boys beat Avon in the semi-final game, and they didn't play in the championship game because they lost the day before to Canton. We played in Bellingham. We played 2 games over break. We unfortunately lost one of our starting point guards who averages 20 points a game, so our tournament was pretty rough. And we lost her for 4 games. She was on vacation, which brought our record to 2-5 as of yesterday. 2 days ago when we lost to Sutton at home, Nipmuc at home, which was really actually upsetting loss. And the boys yesterday just beat Nipmuc at Nipmuc by 30 points. They scored 71 points yesterday. So they're now 4-5, so they're looking at a good chance for playoffs. Our NHS, we have our empty bowl dinner, and that's really what we're focusing on right now. We just started telling our members that they need to have them made, and that'll be February 12th at the BMR cafeteria, where we craft bowls and raffle them off, and people come and eat soup, and the money's donated to the food pantry. We also
What
have...
night of the week is that, man?
What week? It's
What night of the week is it? Do we know?
a Wednesday.
What was the night?
February 12th. People will be selling tickets too. They'll sell tickets at the door. Each member is required to sell 4 tickets. So if you want any, got you. We also have Just Jeans January, which we just started. So teachers and students can bring in old worn jeans that are like that people can wear, and we donate them to Big Sisters of Rhode Island and also to our community. And also we had the gingerbread contest before break, and which was a huge success. We actually donated $170 to Toys for Tots. So our SAD program, we gave it to them to go buy toys for Tots. And there were 3 winners, which went towards pep rally points. So I guess Thomas will talk about that because pep rally happened. Go.
Okay. All right, yeah, so for student council, we had pep rally right before break, which was good. It was probably was my favorite one, I guess, because we won everything, so. Yeah, we won everything, so that was good.
The fix is
But usually, we don't beat the teachers in the tug of war, but we did this year, so that was pretty cool. It was just really good to see everyone, for Spirit Week and for pep rally. A lot of the underclassmen were involved, so that was good to see for us. I know for class officers, we're starting to look at something for our class trip, and we're looking at what we're going to have for our meal and stuff at prom, so we're looking towards the end of the year now for all things like that. There's not much going on since we got back from vacation.
Yeah. 83 days left for seniors.
But who's counting?
Faulkner usually asks that every time you start.
I got the countdown going in our classrooms.
Where are you having the prom? Was that
Lakeview Pavilion in Rentham.
Oh, nice.
Is that Lake Pearl?
No, that's
No.
Luciano's
Mendon.
on Lake
Mendon.
Pearl.
Oh, it's in Mendon.
Lakeview on the
Lake.
Lake
16.
That's the
140 is
Myriad.
the Ballroom.
Yeah, Lakeview's in it's off of Route 1 in Rentham.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's right over near where
Roxborough.
Lake Pearl is and stuff. Yeah.
Watch out for those KP.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then we have midterms. That's pretty much the rest of our...
Oh yeah, we get half days for midterms this
That
year.
was
That's
exciting.
sounds
Is that
really
new?
exciting. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the first time they've done it. So they told us that at the end of pep rally, so that was exciting for us. I don't have to go in for like 2 days because I have
know.
half-year classes and I'm exempt. So
Then you can work.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any other comments from the committee?
No, nice
Questions,
job.
comments?
Good job.
Nice job.
Oh, there's a band concert at the high school tonight too. That's why
There
I'm,
you go,
that's why I'm dressed up. Yeah, it starts at 7 and then
You gotta go,
Maybe
baby.
you'll-
that's where I'm
Oh,
going
you're
after this.
not dressed up for us?
No,
There's two-
sorry
There's
guys.
a basketball game at home tomorrow. You want to go? Boys are
time?
playing.
What time?
7.
Hopedale?
Yep,
Yep.
against Hopedale.
I will not be singing, but I send my regards.
Why not?
I got a game.
Uh,
I know. I can only sing for my own
We
games.
should have you sing here before you leave. Open the meeting.
I'm
That-
sure it's
that's
on
probably a good
television
idea.
everywhere, so I do it for everything.
Sure, sure we can.
Oh Lord.
Okay,
All
Each and every meeting.
sounds
great,
good.
thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Morgan. Thank you, Thomas.
Our first public forum, anybody like to come forth? Not at this time, shaking your head over there? Okay. We'll go consent agenda A, which consists of, for the people at home, our warrants, use of school facilities, field trip requests, minutes from our December meeting, our workshop with Jim Eckert, our CPA, our executive session minutes from December 12th, and our workshop minutes from December 12th.
Move that we accept the consent agenda as presented, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Mr. Buckley, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Vanaco. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Report of the superintendent.
Quicker than I was ready to move. Several items that I want to go through and leave time for the budget discussion. The first one is good news. We participate in a fuel oil bill with the French River Education Center. That bid was out, and the low bid was a company, Petroleum Traders, with a fixed price for next year of $3.0997 per gallon, which is quite good. And as a fixed price, puts us in a good position. Remember, we heat 2 buildings with oil, 2 with gas. So I did a motion from the committee to accept the low bid of Petroleum Traders for fuel oil at the fixed price of $3.0997 for the 2000.
Motion by Ms. Robbins, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Greenstein. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Unanimous?
The next item, if I can, Mr. Chairman, a general report on the roof projects, of which we have 3. I can report to you tonight that the Blackstone roof project, other than trim and a little bit of a punch list that we'll go over next Monday, is substantially completed. They had until we extended it to January 11th, but despite the rain, the snow, and the cold, they were able to get that done, and they are wrapping up the project, and we'll go over the punch list. The weather did challenge them, I must admit, in terms of days that they could actually work, but we hope on Monday to get it done. MSBA will then do an audit, and we will then be able to close out the project, and then work with the town of Blackstone to go towards permanent borrowing. We have a bond anticipation note out, and then we'll work with the town of Blackstone as to how they wish to structure that loan in bonding for that. The high school roof project, the MSBA has approved our extension of the project. We are going beyond the 1 year for the accelerated roof. That's been approved. The MSBA is naming a commissioning agent, for that project, and the Murray Wolf from Wolf and Demetia will be working on construction documents. The one thing that we have to do at the high school is that we do have to retain, and I have received a proposal from Ty and Bond, who are our asbestos engineering firm and lab, because there is asbestos, and the project at the high school will have to have some containment in order to remove the asbestos-containing materials in the roof materials, and then to control the areas in which, between the roof and the ceiling. So that project will involve some asbestos, and that Ty and Bond will be doing the specifications for that as part of the bid project.
And is that not part of the funding?
yeah.
It is part of that.
It's a construction piece, so therefore it's folded into our contract, but in discussing it with Maury Wolf, the architect, I wanted this firm that the district has been using to manage the asbestos to be part of that, not for to bring in a third party for that project. I'd rather have the company that, basically has to come in twice a year to check on our asbestos-containing materials. So we are moving in that direction, and I do have a proposal, and we should wrap that up with them in a week. The next project is the Millville Roof Project. That has been sent to the Mass School Building Authority for review and a vote at their January 2014 meeting, which I believe is on the 23rd. The project total that has been approved for that is $1,530,517 in the project funding agreement. And tonight, the next item under here is for the committee to actually take some action to authorize the borrowing, which is required under the regional agreement as well as Massachusetts general law. And your attorney, Harold Gould, has prepared some motions for us to incur the debt, to which we would then go to the town of Millville and meet with the Board of Selectmen and talk about that process going forward in terms of to proceed. One item in there is obviously that is a building that is owned by the town of Millville, and therefore the borrowing would be Millville's responsibility. You'll hear in the motion in a minute, because the timing is very important. We have to have our funding solidified within 90 days of the approval by MSBA. So in order to function around the town election and the town meeting, we're taking action tonight so that we can clearly stay within that window. But we will hear in the motion, in the event that the town of Millville does not pass a capital override, we would not incur the debt. We would not incur the debt. All right? Just so that everybody understands, when I give that language this evening. Okay? Any questions on that process? Okay. In your packet, you have the motions, I believe.
I don't think so.
That's all right. More importantly, Monique Simard has them in her computer, so we can do it. All right, let me read them, if you will, Mr. Chairman, and then,
It's not this.
yes, it's that.
They're listed under certificate of the secretary.
Yep.
You'll notice approximately a third of the way down.
Oh,
You'll see the
okay.
motion.
Okay.
So the first motion, if you'd like, Mr. Chairman, I'll read that.
Please.
Okay. There are two motions that we have to take, and then the secretary has to certify, and I'll talk about that process. But the first motion is, I move that the regional school district hereby appropriates the amount of $1,530,558 for the purpose of paying the costs of replacing the roof and its appurtenant components at the Millville Elementary School located at 122 Berkeley Way in Millville, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto. The project, which proposed repair project, would materially extend the useful life of the school and preserve an asset that otherwise is capable of supporting the required educational program, and for which the district may be eligible for a school construction grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. Said amount to be expended at the discretion of the school district committee. To meet this appropriation, the district is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Chapter 71, Section 16D of the general laws and the district agreement as amended or pursuant to any other enabling authority. The district acknowledges that MSBA's grant program is a non-entitlement discretionary program based on need as determined by MSBA, and any cost the district incurs in excess of any grant approved by and received from MSBA shall be the sole responsibility of the district, provided further that any grant that the district may receive from MSBA shall not exceed the lesser of 57 and 74/100%, 57.74 of eligible approved project costs as determined by MSBA, or 2, the total maximum grant amount determined by the MSBA, and provided further that the approval of the district's borrowing by the vote shall be subject to and contingent upon an affirmative vote of the town to exempt its allocated share of the amounts required for the payment of interest and principal on said borrowing from the limitation on taxes imposed by Mass General Law 59, Section 21C, Proposition 2.5, and that the amount of the borrowing authorized by the district shall be reduced by any grant amount set forth in the project funding agreement that may be executed between the district and MSBA. All right. Any questions on that? It's required that this be a roll call vote, Mr. Chairman, so if you will, Monique.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move in this as presented by the superintendent. We don't have to read it again.
Motion made by Mr. Buckley as read. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Faulkner. Any discussion? Okay, we'll move for a roll call vote.
Yes?
Yes.
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 The second motion is I further move that within 7 days from the date on which this vote is adopted, the secretary be and hereby is instructed to notify the Board of Selectmen of each of the member towns of the district as to the amount and general purposes of the debt herein authorized as required by the district agreement as amended and by Chapter 71, Section D of the Massachusetts General Laws. In the motion?
Motion.
So moved?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Tringali, seconded by Mr. Buckley. Any discussion?
This roll call also? Mr.
Yes.
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 Thank you. Again, I just, Attorney Gould has obviously worked out this language, but again, I just want to reiterate, the timing of this is in fact giving the town of Millville the option that we will not borrow that money unless there's a vote to exclude that debt. So that is clearly part of the motion to proceed, but the timing of it is too tight, so we're taking advantage of that. Okay? Thank you.
Just for clarification,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, so the 60-day clock starts today, and so they'll have to either ratify or not ratify, or take no action.
Correct.
Is also an option. So how does that tie out? And I know we have a member of the esteemed Board of Selectmen from Millville here, as well as a FinCom member, I believe, with the chair. So how does that tie out? Will you have to call a special, or will they be able to do the annual?
Well, we want to pursue that. Mr. Gould reviewed the law. The option for both towns is to take no action, and at the end of 60 days, the motion that was just read would be approved. Or the town could call a special town meeting. Given that the regional district has inserted that language that no action would be taken on this debt unless the town were to approve an override, it really is an option for the town of Millville not to call a special town meeting and incur that expense to vote on this motion.
Okay.
But rather, again, it's the selectmen's prerogative to put a motion on a ballot for the override, and it will meet the requirements from MSBA, and it will meet the requirements to go out to borrow. And that's a conversation that obviously, that Mr. Gould and I, when we go to a Board of Selectmen meeting in Millville, will have. But those options rest with the town.
Okay,
But
thank you.
I think people remember the regional one, and we can avoid a special town meeting under the law. And the language in here, I think, gives us the flexibility in order to stay within that window and stay within the town's window of when your election is and when your town meeting is by law. So I think we've got some more flexibility with it than was done the last time.
Very well.
All right? So, thank you. All right. It's my pleasure in the packet, every year, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents recognizes in each school a superintendent scholar, and Mr. Dudak and I collaborated, and the high school recognized Daniel Manning, a member of the class of 2014, as the Blackstone Millville Regional High School recipient of the Mass Association of School Superintendents Scholar Award. And one of the ways in which that student is recognized today at Assumption College in Worcester, all of the superintendents from the Worcester County area had a luncheon where the high school principal from the respective school and their student recipient were there, and students were called up and recognized. There's a little bio of accomplishments by Mr. Manning. I had the pleasure of meeting him, but I more importantly had the pleasure of having lunch with him today, and he's certainly an accomplished young man and a credit to the Blackstone Millville Regional School District. I also circulated around the table in the reading packet, this is the program for the banquet luncheon this afternoon. Daniel did say, do I need to be there tonight? And I said, no, he did not have to come to the meeting, but he certainly is a fine young man and an excellent representative for this award. Okay. The next item is a report on the water damage at the middle school. As I informed the committee, we had a plumbing situation here at the middle school which resulted in some water damage to the nurse's office and the general office area. Thanks to the intervention of Scott Hebert, the custodian that was on duty that Saturday, and along with Mr. Cameron, who came down to assess the situation. Phone calls were made, and we were able to get a company in to mitigate some of the issue, and then working with our insurance company, our insurance adjuster, they hired a contractor, so it's all been repaired, it's all been freshly painted, and it looks good as new. But I must admit that it was a major disruption, and Mr. Cameron and his staff, the nurse had to move out of her office area for a period of time while that area was mitigated. The carpet and the wallboard had to be removed and dried and appropriately treated and then replaced. So all of that has been done. So I can call that to your attention. I am assuming that I will get from our adjuster, from our insurance adjuster, full accounting, but all of the coverage that we carry in terms of the initial cleanup and the repair, the only thing that the school district will be responsible is our deductible as part of the terms of our school coverage for insurance. But as soon as I get those numbers, I will give you that information. Okay. Thank you. The next item, I've asked the cafeteria, Jean Sheridan, to give me a report on the condition of the school food services, which is a revolving account. I actually get a profit and loss statement from Jean every month, but I did think it was important that I call to the attention of the Regional School Committee some additional information about the program in terms of that. Food service consists mainly of labor, which includes benefits, food, and then equipment as the major cost items for operating that program. There are some federal and state reimbursements that we get in terms of supplemental revenue to run the program, and the other revenue obviously is the lunch price that we charge for students. The attached is a report from Jean, and we've had a number of equipment issues that had to be addressed this year in terms of costs. The food service is a revolving account, had a nice balance of over $30,000 at the start of the fiscal year, but we have been running through that with some major repairs to equipment, particularly the freezers and the coolers. In many of the buildings, those items are fast approaching as much as 40, and in some cases 25 to 30. In case of this building, 10, and things tend to break and need to be repaired and or replaced from that. We are facing a couple of major expenses of some items that are currently not working, but I've told Jean not to go ahead and make those repairs. We can use other equipment to prepare food simply because we don't have the money at this point. The steam kettles here at the middle school are not working. They'd be $15,000 to replace, and quite frankly, we don't have $15,000. We also, this year, a decision was made last year to add additional cafeteria monitors, one at Blackstone Elementary, one at Millville. The cost of the program was $16,000, and that had to be absorbed by the cafeteria program. So there was an expense of some staffing that were added to that program, and at this point, I've had to make a decision due to a resignation in the kitchen of a kitchen worker, we've hired the monitor to move into the kitchen, and I'm not replacing the monitor. We just can't afford to continue to run a deficit. There is one monitor at Millville. There were two, and now we just have one at Millville Elementary to do it. Projections, at the current rate and the spending out of the revolving account, we are running the risk of closing out the fiscal year in a deficit in the food service area. Ms. Jean Sheridan is doing everything she possibly can to try to mitigate and find ways of some additional revenue and sourcing to do that. I'll be honest with you, one of the things the district requires of the food service program is to cover the health insurance benefit for employees that qualify for health insurance. That's a significant cost for the cafeteria to incur. But I'm reviewing it. We are obviously, we made one decision earlier in the year. We had started a breakfast program at the elementary schools, the middle school and the high school. The one at Millville Elementary had such low participation, we were losing money not only in labor but also in food. And we discontinued that program. We just could not run that program with the participation level that we had. We were able to retain that program at the other schools. And you understand it's pretty much enrollment driven. Our smallest school is the one that we have the greatest difficulty covering all of those costs in terms of that. So I share that with you, and my plan is to be back to you in the spring, probably at the April meeting with that. But I need to keep you informed that there's a potential of a deficit in the revolving account in terms of our obligation. When we find the opportunity to economize and make decisions, if they're in the best interest of the district in terms of not diminishing the services, but at the same time lowering our costs, we are making those decisions. Any questions?
Yeah, historically, it's really for the committee, historically, in terms of the repairs that are listed out here, when's the last time you've seen something like that? Not in terms of just
Oh.
that amount. Anybody?
When we covered the health insurance years ago, we always ran a deficit, correct?
I'm talking about like the, all
I
the
think
repairs.
are probably indicative of what Dr. Perry, Dr. Davidson said, is that, you know, so it's reaching a lot of that end-of-life stuff. I don't think we've ever really had an awful lot of repair hits, but what we did have a significant hit was with them carrying the medical, but I believe we made a decision last year to try to push it back into them, because there was a surplus. And Ms. Sheridan has done an outstanding job as far as, you know, putting a lot of controls in place. She's revamped a lot of the job duties and so forth. So I'm hesitant to fall back to that because really, you know, this system has to stand on its own. We can't afford to be subsidizing it out of the operation. My own personal opinion. I don't know, has she looked at, like, just, this is probably an unpopular thing, but, you know, the prices, or are they competitive? Are they similar to a lot of the communities, or?
Again, I don't have first knowledge of it. My understanding is that our pricing is, you know, within the Blackstone Valley area. I mean, you all remember that Mrs. Sheridan works for us 2 days a week, and she works in Bellingham 3 days a week, so she actually is running 2 different programs. So we get the advantage of somebody with expertise and skills to which we're only paying them, you know, for 2 days a week to do that.
Since she's taken over, though, she has, you know, the prices have come up. I think it was just
Probably
picking up those health insurance costs.
I think we were running a surplus last year.
We did.
Last
This is
couple of
even
years,
30
yeah.
grand.
Yeah,
This is a bigger swing,
It's
doesn't
big.
go from a plus to a,
yeah.
But we
Again,
weren't doing health insurance
Yeah,
before.
we did
no,
last year.
well, you
did
did
last
health
year?
insurance last year, as she explained it to me, but $16,000 of additional personnel was added, as well as these repairs. So you take a surplus of about $35,000, and with the repairs and the 2 additional, and she wasn't aware of that until, you know, late in the school year, that she was being told that those people were going to come out of those salaries are coming out of her budget. Now, again, I've eliminated one of those positions simply because we had an opening, and that person moved into the cafeteria, and I said, we can't fill it.
So the two monitors, or how many monitors do we have?
There's one monitor in Millville, and there are 2 monitors in Blackstone,
I think we only added 2, though.
one at each
There were
building.
2, we added 2, 1 in each building.
Correct. Right. Blackstone
I
is
don't recall us saying that we wanted that to flow into her account, but yeah, my mind's going, so.
You know, there's been a radical change with I'm sure the food preparation and everything else because of meeting the health standards, the revised health standards. And I wonder if there's any kind of relief out there, grants or whatever. I'm sure she's looked into it. She's pretty savvy with that.
she's very aware of the food purchasing through a co-op, the commodities. School lunch used to benefit greatly from the agriculture, USDA, with commodities. The commodities have gone down. There just aren't as many, and what that means is that we then have to buy food product on the open market, the wholesale market, and that's problematic for every food service. And as you're right, the standards have changed in terms of what has to be offered in terms of fresh vegetables and fruit, which adds to the cost of what goes out there on a plate to a student.
Yeah, it wasn't phased in either. It was, last year it was this, next year it's that. And there wasn't much flexibility in implementing it over a period of years and being able to adjust for that. What are these $15,000 kettles?
Steam kettles,
Seems like
the large.
seems like a lot of money.
The large
They're
cooking-
small, they're big.
They're big, yes. Yeah, but again, when, school cafeterias were designed for these buildings, it was designed by with a concept of doing a lot of cooking from, if you will, from scratch. And because a lot of that product was available from the federal government. You could get large tins of tomatoes, so you would make your own tomato sauce for pizza. Today, that's not as readily available. That's why you needed those big cookers to deal with some of that food production. The reality today, most of what we do in the cafeterias, is prep and serve. We have wonderful people. They're fully capable and they put out some great meals. But the reality is, when you don't get that cheaper product from the federal government, it's difficult to do that kind of prep. But in our labor management, one of the things that Gina is required to do by the Massachusetts School Nutrition Program is a study every month in terms of a ratio of labor to meals, and we're fine, and we're doing quite well in terms of that. The difficulty, it's not, if she just had to run her program based on her food and her staff this year, we wouldn't have a deficit. We have a deficit because she was asked to pick up $16,000 of additional staff, and she was asked to pick up the health insurance, and she was asked to pick up now these equipment expenses. And again, they just happened. I mean, if you notice there, I was getting confused because Jean was calling me about coolers, and I said, we fixed that one. She said, no, it's the other one. We got into one of those discussions, because I thought she was talking to me about the same, she said, no, different school, same problem. And those things just happen.
She's done a wonderful job for us over the years, so, this is definitely not reflective of her, of her performance, so.
And again, I have to say, I've been to all schools and seen the staff, cook and present meals. Our people are working very hard. That's not where the problem lies. But again, when you have a program that runs on such a close margin, $15,000 of repairs, it's pretty dramatic. $16,000 of additional staff, dramatic in terms of that.
Does the walk-in work at the complex? Is it operational?
Yes. Yeah. We've made a repair to the door, but we're not replacing the door.
Okay.
And I
They
think
work.
the aid that was set up in Millville, I think it was to have that extra set of eyes for children to make sure that they're eating and they're getting what they need. So is Mrs. Desai going to keep an eye on
Yes.
having that? Okay.
Yes.
'Cause I think that was the
Mrs.
purpose of
Desai and I
that.
have talked, I've been there several times during lunch. Lunch is not 300 kids at one seating at Millville.
No, but there were,
Yeah.
there were multiple continuous issues, and this year I haven't heard or seen of any.
No.
So, but there's been that extra person in place, so, you know, it's still a lot of little kids trying to get to where they need to be. Lunch is a little longer this year, too, so they have that extra time. I think that there was definitely a lack of communication if she didn't know that was coming, because we talked about those positions for many months. And whether or not we even knew, is what I'm saying, which line item they were falling into. So that, you know, could have certainly been a breakdown on our part. I'm not.
Yeah. Again, I came in August, and I met with her, and she said, I've got $16,000 of labor that I didn't anticipate. And there was no money, I could find no
But
money
I
in the
only
budget.
recalled, I thought there was one in Millville and one at the complex, not two, not one for each cafeteria.
No,
Because
no.
they already had,
No, there's just two people, two physical people.
so I don't know if those numbers match up what we thought. I mean, because it's only an hour and a half in Millville a day. It's 2 lunches, 5 days a week, so I'm just,
It's a 2-hour,
Confused by that
it's a
number.
2-hour payment. Yeah.
And I think as long as, you know, Mrs. Desai is conscious of the reason that we did put them in, and, you know, I'm comfortable with that,
Yeah.
as long as she's aware of that.
I think the other thing that surprised me looking at this is the amount of repair being done here.
Yep.
Because this kitchen is, it's
Right.
beautiful, it's well-maintained.
Yep.
In fact, Mr. Crivelli, you and I did some cooking back there one day. It was pretty nice, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we heated up some food. I wouldn't call it cooking, but
No.
it's not that old.
No.
And it is very well-maintained, so to see over $25,000 in repairs just here is
There was a
concerning.
major issue, and with a compressor that was located on top of a freezer that was constantly freezing up, probably not the best design when the building was built,
Yeah.
and became problematic over time, and had to be addressed. But again, 10 years, commercial equipment, things wear out, and, that's what we're facing. Some of the oldest building, the high school, there's some equipment up there that's still original. It's still original and works fine, but it is what it is. Again, I'll bring this back to you in April. In terms of expenses, it may be a discussion that we have to have during the budget process. But again, if you're continuing to ask the food service program to provide, for the benefits, as well as not provide any money for equipment repair, that's going to mitigate, there's an increased price in lunches. We just can't continue to meet those obligations without looking for additional revenue in the program. And we should have that discussion as part of my overall budget.
So it does say here that we get 6 cents incentive for meeting USDA healthy food guidelines.
Yes,
That's per meal,
per meal,
probably cost us
per type A lunch.
26 cents per meal.
Right.
to
We're
meet it.
losing that one, huh?
Does the free and reduced lunch come into play with any of the deficit right now? No.
The
Okay.
the only thing that's a reimbursement that comes from the federal government through the state.
Right.
And generally what happens on the profit and loss statement every month is the state check lags sometimes behind. So, one of the things Gene always points out to me is, yes, that bigger, but I'm anticipating
Right.
a payment. And that payment sometimes comes in, the 5th of the month. But when she closes at the end of the month, it's not showing as revenue. But, she watches that very closely, and it's pretty much formula-driven by reports that are filed, with the school nutrition people. But sometimes the revenue doesn't come right at the end of the month. But she watches that very carefully. So I'll be back to you in April, and again, maybe in the budget process, we should have some discussion, particularly around equipment repairs and benefits for the employees and the equipment. Thank you. Let's see. The next item, the extended day program. The committee's aware, you authorized an extended day program, which provides an option for parents to have before-school and after-school coverage. School authorized a coordinator for that program, and we started that at the beginning of this school year. Nadine Carter is your extended day coordinator, and she has been working to run that program in terms of attracting students to be engaged in that program after school, in some cases before school. I did have to eliminate the before-school program at Millville Elementary. Simply, we did not have enough children to begin to cover our costs. Fortunately, we were able to offer those parents the drop-off at Blackstone Elementary, and Tellstone was willing to have a bus stop, pick the kids up, and bring them back to Millville Elementary. But again, that was a very small number of children. In some days, only 3 children. So we were able to continue to offer the program, but parents had to drop off at Blackstone, and we were then providing the transportation back to Millville Elementary with our regular transportation program. But I have asked Mrs. Carter to kind of give us a projection on what her monthly expenses are. And again, her expenses for that program are principally salaries, which includes her director's salary, as well as the staff that she hires by the hour to provide coverage for the children, either before school or after school, providing some money for snacks and some money for some supplies for the programs.
I'm sorry, has the staffing changed since Millville has come here?
Yes. Yeah, we were able to eliminate
Okay.
the staff member that was covering over at Millville and incorporate with a little expansion here at Blackstone.
Okay.
And again, those are not positions, they're really generated by the number of children we have. These are hourly positions, so we always have the flexibility of making an adjustment in terms of that, and deal with it. However, given the projection, if we would remain with the current numbers, we are looking at closing that program with probably, again, a deficit of somewhere around $17,000.
I think we had thought about, I don't know now, I'm thinking, were we expecting to pick up more during February break and April break, or no? I
We
didn't know if
don't
we were
operate the program
Not
during
at
school
all.
vacations.
Okay.
No.
Was that just the middle school was
Yeah, that
was
was
running some
Mr.
stuff?
Cameron's program, I think. He's talking about that.
Yeah, this program is only focused on the
Before, no?
the K to 5 population.
Oh,
We
okay.
don't offer this program at the middle school at all.
Now, for the lack of enrollment, is there been any consideration to any cut in staff?
Yes.
And has that been done with
Yes.
this projections? So even
Except
with-
that the biggest number is the salary for the director.
Well, I think we need to.
You entered
ask-
into a contract with the director at a fixed salary. That's your biggest liability on the program
Is it per year, or did we sign, is it a?
per year.
per year?
I would like to ask her to come in so we can see what we can do to support her and to get this, I mean, we knew this was going to be something that had to grow, so we need to keep helping her do that.
Yeah, I would respectfully request, members of the committee, that's not a committee decision or discussion. I really would suggest you ask 1 or 2 members to meet with her to pursue that. Quite frankly, I meet with her. I'm not sure what you're asking her to come in and do. She's tried advertising, she's tried connecting with parents. You can do it if you
Well,
want.
I
I'm
guess-
just not sure what you're going to tell her to do.
I don't want to tell her anything, I want to see what we can do to support her. Does she need,
Does she need more exposure? Does she
yeah,
need more?
what, I mean, we as a
Needs more
committee agreed
students.
that we wanted to do this to attract
Lots of-
school choice children to, I mean, this is something that it wasn't going to just be blossoming the first 4 months that we have it in place. So, I mean, what can we do to,
I don't know what you think I do with her, but I have to say I've done every one of those things with her. We've talked about all of
Can I
those
just-
things.
Can I ask a
So-
couple questions? How many children are being serviced by the program?
The numbers vary on any given day.
Yeah, just kind of a ballpark. Is it 20 kids? Is it
25.
How many?
25.
25.
Yep.
So for 25 kids, we're going to lose 15 grand, 17 grand.
Mhm.
So that's not good.
No, it's not.
It's not a good return. But in support of what Mrs. Vanaco's asking, and I don't doubt that you've done a lot, but I'd like to see a formal report that says, I advertised here, I went out and talked to these people. I don't want a spreadsheet that is kind of hard to read. To me, that's like, that kind of shows me the type of quality that we're getting out of this, and it's not very impressive. You know, I believe, I supported this last year to go forward because I see that how the dynamics in the family is changing and how this could be a great entry point to keep kids in town. So we can offset that over 200,000 that's going out that we're not getting back from choice. So I think we all knew there'd be a loss, but I was hoping that we'd have someone, and I don't know Mrs. Carter or anything, but someone who would be dynamic and really pushing this thing. Because I know that other districts are very successful in this regard. So the point is that they literally are funded very comfortably and turn a handsome profit that stays within the program. I'd like to just be at a point where, you know, we're breaking even. But if we're only getting 25 kids, to me that's an F.
Well, you have to remember, you're competing with another
Right.
program in town.
Right.
We-
Absolutely. So that's what we were hoping that, you know, okay, now we need to compete, and we need to beat those people to the mark, if you
Well,
will.
I mean, one of the major factors is that when school's canceled, Boys and Girls Club's still open. So a parent can go to work, and we're not open. We're not open, and that's a big competitive edge as far as I'm concerned. You know, from a parent
So I guess
perspective.
I'd ask, why aren't we open?
If I have to close school because of weather conditions,
Mhm.
we're not safe to open.
Well, Canal Street and Blackstone's just as bad as Lincoln Street or Bennett Street. So I don't kind of.
They're a private business, they can
Right.
make those decisions with other.
We have to rely on the town to then open that building with Sanders and trucks, and, you know, for opening a building for 8 children, it may not be the priority to get the town safely open.
Well, do we know how many students actually started the program in September that were committed to the program versus right now?
Are we
Because I think
larger
we
or-
could
Are
look
we
at,
gaining or are we losing?
are we gaining or are we losing,
Yeah.
right?
The numbers are in flux, you know, some children are there 5 days a week, some children are there 3 out of the 5, you know, the numbers have remained somewhat constant, you know, in terms of looking at the students.
I just think there's got to be different dynamics to look at, you know, to make it more appealing than the other program in town. Not to mention we added a bus for the other program in town, and, you know, if we could somehow get those kids to be with us in the morning, that would be a huge expense to eliminate. You know, I'm not saying I want to recommend things to her. I just want her to know that we put this in place because we wanted it to be successful. And even more so on top of that, I'm not leaving 25 parents high and dry with saying, oh, sorry, we're not going to have extended day anymore. I mean, this is something we were committed to when we put this in place. So we need to fix it.
Well, we also
I
put it in
think-
place pretty quickly, too. It's like
Yeah.
they're changing the school lunch program, everything's done.
I think
In August, and
this
here we
is
go.
small.
But I
And
think we were looking at school choice a lot, even though it was put in place quickly. I think we were saying, what can we do to get these kids back? Because we did have quite a big population with school
Yeah, but my
choice in.
point is that I don't think we captured, I'm hoping we didn't capture as much as we may have the potential to capture in future years. And I'd like to know,
this is small.
where's our break-even point? You know, is it 36 kids that we need to get, and now we start to turn the corner and actually show some profit? If we can model that, then we know what our target is. And if we know if it's 50, if it's 75, we have a stretch
even
to get
close.
there.
You know, we had put out that survey that revolved around some regional agreement questions, and this was a
Top thing.
huge part of it. And I believe, I'm certain I have it somewhere, I'm not prepared with it tonight, but I believe it was 80% of the people that answered the survey were in favor of in-school, after-school care. So we felt that we had that, you know, to grow on, to build on when we.
And as a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, if you will, I do believe that she should come to the committee. and explain and get better, a plan that's gonna lower that exposure, or gonna lower that deficit. Now, I'm not trying to say we're gonna get to zero, but what steps can be taken to lower that? And although with all the respect, Dr. Davis, she's still an employee of the district, and she does answer to the committee either directly or indirectly, so I believe that she should come to us and then explain to us what her plan is to get this thing moving.
Dr. Davis, I agree with Brian, too. I think people might have already been committed to the Boys and Girls Club with the Little Peoples or things like that at the beginning, not knowing we had this program. I also talked to some parents in September, and they weren't aware, and it was probably in the packet, and it was new, and when it got out there of that program, and possibly, but I also see going forward, and I certainly wouldn't entertain stopping it, you know.
I'm not, please, I did
At
not suggest you stop it. I'm simply suggesting,
Going forward,
going forward, you have a
how
big
can we
decision
keep
to
running
make
in the red?
around a program that was constituted, and yet it's running a deficit when the expectation was it was going to, at a minimum, cover its costs. Remember, the program runs without any charges for any use of space.
Right.
The only thing we're attempting to cover here is the labor costs, the snacks, and the supplies.
And the hours of operation, drop off and pick up, do you know, is it like 6 to 6 roughly? or-
6 to 6.
Yeah, I
6 to
believe the
6.
earliest drop-off is 6. Again, the cost is prorated, you know, based
Okay.
on what time they drop off, but the program is open till 6 o'clock at night.
Which I think is similar to the Boys and Girls, but I think the commitment's been there and familiarity of brothers and sisters and different ones going there and friends and such, that
My
a tough competition.
My comment about coming before the committee, I have spent a considerable amount of time with Nadine at the beginning of the year explaining that this program needs to break even, and have sat with her and have gone online to look at other extended day programs in other communities about how to advertise and get out. But when people have already made their childcare arrangements for the year,
Right.
it was a difficult challenge in September and October to go out and talk about a program that parents had already signed up for. Some of the other programs require a 30-day notice to leave.
Right.
So if parents had signed up for a program and had already paid in August, and they have to give a notice of 30 days, the basic availability would come as the beginning of October. It was a difficult challenge. You know, I
agree.
think the timing of it, you know, quite frankly, you know, was very difficult, you know, to do the notification and the program and setting it up and getting it done. She came on when I did in August, and, you know, quite frankly, with an expectation of doing that. Mrs. Carter can come and explain. I just want to share with the committee. She and I have had this difficult conversation, you know, about it. But I do think you're fully aware that we are competing with two fairly well-established programs
Exactly.
in Blackstone and one smaller program.
Right, with very good
Less of it.
reputations.
So I guess I'd follow that. Then when she comes, she should be prepared to tell us what her plans are to take it to that next step up. Okay, no one's doubting what you just said, but okay, so what strategy is there to capture more, you know, increase the headcount? That's what I'd like to say, is that, okay, we know, you know, if you thought it was going to break even, then you were probably misled. An initial program, but you don't want to lose, you don't want to make it a loss leader that, you know, you're only doing this for 3 kids. So what strategies, because she's been in the business, is she going to, you know, exercise or execute in order to increase attendance here? In other words, what makes parent A and B want to come here? Okay? In other words, what is the aha? That's where you have to differentiate the program that's offered at Little People's, program that's offered at Boys and Girls Club, and so forth. I mean, I just think that makes...
I mean, there's probably an 8-month window right now, starting right now, to look at the 5 or 6 things we're going to do differently, and I'm sure she's gone through that and been doing that. But I think now is the time. Parents are going to start deciding between now and July what what's the best placement for the child in before and after school. You know, we're always going to have that school day cancellation issue. We're always going to have the vacation issue if there's this other program in the district that's generating money from that. You know, meaning, you know, Cameron, Ms. Cameron, which is a great thing. I'm not knocking that. But I think you have to look at those factors too that are really going against. You know, also a summer program. You know, parents still work. You know, throughout the summer. So I think if the window is now, and by end of June, you know, we see things starting to pick up, then I think that those are all good signs.
Yeah, we should be able to forecast the end of June what our head count is going to look like. If it's going to be, then they're going to have to make the tough decision. If is it viable, isn't it viable?
I mean, it's easy to say at every parent-teacher conference, at every, you know, event, there should be some type of,
Have
you
some
know,
kind of flyers out, whatever.
you know, there should be those things in terms of a marketing push between the next 6 or 7 months, and then we can really look at it and take a look at it. You know, I mean, maybe we shouldn't have hired a full-time director. Maybe that should have evolved as the program evolved. Maybe we couldn't have found somebody. I don't know. You know, it was rushed though. I mean, it was rushed.
I just think, in all fairness, too, I mean, if we as a committee need to decide whether we're committed to moving it forward and being competitive, because I do believe it will mean making changes to the way it's being run. I'm here, I'm at the Millville School dropping my son off for basketball at 6 p.m., and the first thought that runs through my mind is, I don't know if I would want. I mean, those kids are in that cafeteria from 3 to 6. I think they go outside on nice days, but I think we need to give her the leniency to be creative with the program. I don't know what it is. I'm just saying, but is that all she was given? You know, I don't know.
I think moving forward, she really has to look at that, and I'm sure that's been going on.
Or and another thing is maybe some feedback from the parents that are participating with their kids.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to know the pros and the cons right now on how it has been for the first half of school.
Yeah. I mean, there are critical factors.
And I mean, another thing you just said about the middle school program with the vacation weeks, we could be creative and roll that together. That could be a gain for the middle school, and you know that would fill the gaps.
They
for
could
the
just
parents.
shift over and take advantage
Right.
of just the
no
Cameron's
worries about
program
school
here.
vacation. You know, it's some different setting, but
Mm-hmm.
more fun.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of factors in there.
There are.
You know, I mean, summertime is a nice pool. You know, at the boys and girls. You know, and
But
again,
you can
we're
sign
not
up
gonna-
for you can sign up for just the summer.
You can, but you don't think they're all summer saying, "Hey, we're running the special." You know, if you sign up now between September and December. I mean, whatever. We can talk about it ad nauseum, but I think.
Well, I would have liked, I agree with Brian, if we can say what our break-even point is, how many kids do we need to run a successful program for, you know, that would be a good number to see.
How much would a pool cost?
How much would a pool cost?
But I
Okay.
really, I think we need to give her, she hasn't even had 12 months.
Absolutely.
We-
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be a surprise that we're behind the 8 ball the first year.
And you
I
just
think
said
she
we-
needs another year to run.
Right.
I
You
agree.
just said
We
we
can
were going to
really
know
evaluate
by
it.
the end of June. We didn't even start advertising it until August.
Yeah.
So we did get the people that hadn't made that choice. So
For the superintendent, though, do we have enough money? And, I mean, we've had some budget surprises this year. Do we have enough money to float this program till the end of the year?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on Bill's comment, too, because we have something at Northbridge similar, and good point. It was a teacher adjustment council. There was some sort of stipend that they had taken the
Right.
lead, whether it be morning, and then the afternoon program is led by teachers and such, so it's more a stipend type thing, so I think the cost
Is
might
that
have
what we
been.
have? Or do we have separate people that just kind of come in for a couple hours?
Their teacher aides.
Most of our staff that do the afternoon program are hourly paraprofessionals.
Yeah.
Other than Nadine, most of them are employed with us in a paraprofessional capacity. to
And
come
then
in.
shift over and become daycare after school
Right.
hours.
Yeah.
Which is
That
us, but
makes
I don't
sense.
believe we have a director, Steve, do
That-
we? There's not a
There
separate
is, yeah.
director.
Yeah, there is.
that's-
But you're right, it's basically
It's you,
staff
right?
who's
You're
already
the
here.
director, right?
Nah, I don't think so.
And I also think it's hard to compare to programs that have been in Blackstone for a number of years when this one's only been here for, so many months. I think that's, I don't think we're giving it enough time. I mean, we can continuously compare, but as a parent in this program right now, what drew me to this program, that drew me away from another program, was separating the kids. There's certain things that were in the packet that said was going to happen. And that's what drew me into coming to the Blackstone Millville extended day versus another extended day. So I think we need to check those things that were, advertised, make sure that they're happening, and see where we can go with that. But I don't think we've given it enough time, and I don't think we can compare it to programs that have been here for so long. I really don't.
But it has to be part of the equation moving forward. in terms of
Absolutely.
How do you compete? That's all.
Absolutely.
That's all. I mean, I think, and no one's implying that we're closing it tomorrow.
Right.
No. Nobody is. And we are going to stick it out, but we have to look at the factors moving forward
Absolutely.
over the next 18 months.
Absolutely, I agree with
Mr.
you.
Chairman, pleasure of the committee to have this Nadine Carter come at the first meeting in February.
Yeah.
If any of the members of the committee have specific questions about the program, if you could email me to them so that I can prepare Mrs. Carter for her report.
Maybe we can have a nice little video done for promotional purposes.
Sure, Wendy can be in it. You can start on it. Why not? You just made it. You just did a
That's-
half a
that's not
commercial
bad
right there.
idea. That's not a bad idea. Do a video and
Get it on the internet.
My son will run the whole thing.
That's fine.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a contract issue, and the cover memo in here. Every once in a while in a teacher's contract, some language gets dropped and it's a typographical error, even though we're in the age of computers. And it was brought to my attention by the association that we had a contract language that appeared in contracts up through the 2005 to 2008 contract, and then it disappeared from the contract. In checking with Mr. Gould, there was no negotiation taking that language out. It appears it was a printing or typographical error, that a paragraph got left out of the contract when it was then extended beyond 2008. And in meeting with the association president and vice president, meeting with your own attorney, looking back through the file of documents on prior negotiations, I find no evidence that the school committee ever negotiated this language out. And this is occasionally happens, and my recommendation is that for the committee is to restore this language to the contract, and it's specified in there. One of the reasons that I think it got overlooked, if you'll notice, this is language pursuant to the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, which is the accreditation of the high school, which happens once every 10 years. So as a result, I think it just got overlooked, and in the process of printing, it comes at the end of a particular article, Article 8, Section D, and it stopped appearing after 2008. And I honestly believe, after interviewing all the parties concerned, that it was a typo or a printing error to do that. So recommend to the committee that you restore that language, Section D of Article 8, to the contract with the Blackstone Millville School Educators Association.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made by Kathy Robinson, seconded by Barry Robin. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Unanimous?
I did get to see some dusty file cabinets. Just an update on our bullying prevention intervention policy. When I came before the committee previously, I said that we would be getting this information out, post it up on the website, and I would be getting back to you in January. We had some difficulty posting it up on our website, and then the holidays. So I'm really asking that I will bring this back to you for another vote at your February meeting. I was simply a little ambitious, and we ran into a glitch getting that document up and posted. So that's not realistic to get that done. But so I just want to call that to your attention. I will bring it back, but I will do it in February. I need the month of January.
See if you can get
Get it shared.
past it.
Any
Does she have
questions?
the bills? So we can
The
sign them
next
all?
item, just want to call to the attention of the committee that the technology acceptable use procedure for faculty and staff You have a school committee policy on acceptable use, but it's up to the superintendent to develop an acceptable use procedure agreement. There was one in the district up until about 3 or 4 years ago. In checking with Brad Monroe, that it was, again, not done. I went back, working with Brad, and also Mr. Chaplin was helpful in sharing an acceptable use policy from King Philip Regional School District. So what you see attached is now an acceptable use policy for the faculty and staff of the school, which people will be asked to sign as part of their privilege to access our system. This is a typical process and procedure for any of us who go on to a system, although sometimes when you're sitting at Starbucks and they give you that fine print and they just say agree, and you quickly click agree, and you haven't read the 28 pages of fine print, but you do have to agree in order to access the system. And we really do need to have this in place, and then annually thereafter, every year, when the teachers come back in the fall, this would become part of the orientation and a sign-off. This does also apply to any other staff member that has access to the computer system, so that would include a significant number of our support staff to do that, because it is a public system, not a private. There's no expectation of privacy when a person is using a BMR computer or on our network. It is all public, and this disclosure and this procedure clearly articulates that. So just to call it to your attention, but you do have a policy which is properly constructed to be general. This is much more specific. And again, my only caveat on this is that this really has to be looked at every year or so because the technology changes. All right? The technology changes.
And there's one for the students, correct?
Yes, there is one for the students, and yes, that's
I just have one quick question, because I know there was I
Implemented.
believe Mr. Dudak came last year about cell phones and being used at certain times. Do they sign an acceptable use for using technology within the buildings?
Only technology that
Only the ones that we put,
The acceptable use policy is the technology that uses our network. All right, so if you're using our Wi-Fi, that's covered. Cell phones are again, a piece of a technology that, you know, is not ours.
And I think that would evolve if it was like a BYOD, if there was a BYOD. They got one in Franklin?
Bring your own,
I don't think so.
Bring your
but
own
I-
device, yeah. I don't know.
Bring your own
what
device, but if it evolved to that level, then there would be some type of addendum.
But I remember, but when Mr. Dudak was here, he was allowing them to use cell phones during certain times. So I guess my question is, in the student acceptable use policy, is there something in there that says something about, you know?
Well, actually, I think what they're doing is they're using probably the guest network. So that's not touching us. In other words, it's, when you log on here, you're using the guest network.
Right.
So there's a closed network for probably students, as well as closed network for staff.
Okay.
Okay, so they also have to acknowledge, and by them connecting, they're actually using a password, username and password that's been generated and given to them
Okay.
by the staff.
And that falls under,
right.
okay.
But the loophole is there are some devices
Right.
that they don't need to access our Wi-Fi.
Right.
Right.
Well, if they have
Right.
4G or LTE on their phone and there's reception, you know,
But they can use it during lunchtime, I believe.
I don't know.
In passing time, I think.
Yeah.
It was, because I recall that discussion, because it was like, okay, you can use a cell phone, like, say, in math class to do this, but then when you go in the hallway, you can't. Well, who's gonna police that?
Right, I remember that.
You know, I mean, that's why I think.
That'll evolve eventually, but I just.
Well,
I
I
was
think
thinking-
really what the strategy has to be is that you teach teach students to be good digital citizens. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable. You know, and there are some safeguards. We have to have an internet filter, a Child Internet Protection Act, in order for us to get E-rate reimbursement. So, you know, those safeguards are in place, and then they're managed by the by the staff on what they can get to and so forth. I mean, for a long time, YouTube was shut off,
Right.
but now it's probably not.
Right. And I think you'll see that evolving more in the handbook that the parent signs off on in the child's about acceptable cell phone use policy.
The next item, I had presented once before to the committee a first quarter review of the current FY14 budget. Again, I'm not 100% sure, but the documents that I'm going to be referring to here, I believe you have. They are clearly stated at the top, FY14 budget. One is for special education, and then one is for regular education. Okay? But it's FY14 budget. I do somewhat apologize in getting this packet out to you. Donna, who's never out sick, came down with a very bad cold and bronchitis, and I told her to stay home. So she was working from home, but in all fairness, she got this work done. We just didn't have a chance to coordinate it and get it all put in the packet, So it's there. Everybody find it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I just want to highlight, where we are as a district in terms of our finances, in terms of what are we looking at for potential deficits as we go forward in the current budget, not thinking fiscal 15, but current budget. When I presented the special education budget to you last time, you may recall that we had a significant deficit of over $400,000. We still do. The deficit is projected there to be $446,281. These numbers have been updated by Dr. Hahi, working with Donna Scungio. The good news is that we've also had an audit of our circuit breaker funding for this year. The school committee took in your offset to the FY14 budget a $300,000 circuit breaker, but that was money from last year. This year's circuit breaker money we can use in this fiscal year, or we could roll it into next fiscal year as an offset. All right? So the good news is that we have not received the official certification from the audit team, but it looks like we are going to get $385,000 in circuit breaker funding, which will reduce the special education deficit down to a more manageable number of $61,281. All right? So that's the good news with that. However, the bad news is that's not money we're going to have in anticipation of an offset for next year. That doesn't mean that we won't get some circuit breaker money in fiscal 15, but at the time you have to set your certification of your budget, circuit breaker is a line item in the state budget. The risk is always in planning an anticipated receipt or revenue. One has to assume that the legislature is going to put money in that account, and the percent of reimbursement is going to be roughly the same as this year. Chances are not good by the time we go to certify our budget or go to town meetings that we will know that number with any certainty. It doesn't mean we won't be able to take some estimate, but I will be cautioning you that it has to be a conservative estimate in terms of that. So this contributes to the problem of that discussion we've already had, that we've used $600,000 this past year from excess and deficiency account to offset the assessment to the towns. If we use this money, which we have to, in order to keep our budget in balance, the difficulty is that that money cannot be used again as we move forward. So I'm giving you good news and I'm giving you the bad news. The good news is that I think we'll be able to manage this deficit now by utilizing these circuit breaker monies as it comes in. The circuit breaker is done in quarterly payments, so we should anticipate the receipt of this money, by June 30th to be able to apply it to the special education deficit. But it is important to understand that we would not have that money moving forward. So the special ed deficit that I reported on the last time, I think is now more manageable and under control. If we then look at the sheets that are titled FY14 Budget Regular Education, again, what we've done here what Donna has done is to break out the accounts by the function, the 4-digit function code, and to try to project a balance, and a number that's in parentheses is actually a deficit, because there are several accounts that are indeed at this point in deficit as we are trying to go through this current fiscal year in terms of that. So that we have some accounts that are in deficit, not by what I would consider numbers that have major concern, because when you look at the accounts that are showing balances at this point, they clearly cover that. Now, I just want to point out again that you're picking up almost $100,000 because you have a interim superintendent and you only have a curriculum person now working 2 days a week to do that. All right, so we're picking up $24,000 on the superintendent's salary and $96,000. Now, I'll caution you on my salary. I work a per diem, and our original agreement was 4 days a week. I have been working a number of 5-day week simply because I need to get the work done to be here. But again, we are anticipating, some balances in that regard. All right, and the other line item that has a significant balance is on the last sheet. And it's in our health insurance account. I believe I told you at the last time we had gotten our MedX plan, which is our retirees that are on Medicare. That policy runs January to December, and our rates actually went down, and we saved almost $100,000 in our MedX supplemental insurance for that. The additional money in that account, all right, is that we've had a decline in terms of what was the percent increase that we experienced there, and some decline in some of our other insurances in terms of looking at our policies to do that. So between all of that, when you asked the question before, can we absorb the hit in the extended day program or even the cafeteria deficit, the answer is, I believe at this point, yes, barring any other unforeseen expenditures. Remember, we have a significant exposure in the budget, as we do every year, for personnel costs. If somebody were to take ill and we would have to hire a long-term substitute, or there were to be another special education issue, I can tell you that I'm addressing a special education issue here at the middle school, and I do anticipate having to probably put in place a staff person here at the middle school for the remainder of the year. We're currently advertising and looking for somebody to address a need here at the middle school. That will probably run approximately, in terms of salary for the half year of the school, somewhere around $30,000. But we have not hired a person, so I can't give you a projected cost on that in terms of where we are. Now, I do have to tell you that many of these projected balances are from some accounts that at this point the substitute account is currently in deficit, and that's a potential area that we could have a larger deficit going forward. So I think the good news is I think the regular ed budget is certainly in much better shape than I presented to you at the first quarter review. The special education has somewhat resolved itself with the application of circuit breaker money to that account in terms of where we are. So that's the quarterly update in terms of the overall budget. I do not have the latest snow removal figures in this calculation. Even little storms cost us money. Even little storms cost us money. But that is an area that obviously the weather dictates where we are. Any questions on this? Because I think it's important to have this perspective. Is this helpful to get this?
It is. It is very good.
The other number is where we are with the revenue, and this was not in your packet. But tracking our revenues in terms of obviously the assessment money that we get from Blackstone and Millville, and also the Chapter 70 aid, those are all tracking Our state transportation, which is the regional school transportation, we've not yet received a payment for that. Typically, we get one in December, so I was kind of looking for that, but we're told January. But that appears to track to that number. School choice. I have looked at school choice in terms of what the number of students that we have out and the number of students we have in. We have more students out than we do in. We have approximately 78 out and 28 in. So the delta of 50 students, and, you know, I'm waiting for the DESE report on, you know, the debit and credit, you know, for that. The school choice number, you know, was presented that it would be a deficit of about 244,507. And I think we're tracking, you know, close to that number, all right? But that's not a plus, that's a minus
Is it
off our
possible
revenue.
to do some, and I thought we had talked about it a long time ago, to do some type of survey and find out why are kids leaving? So maybe we can specifically address some issues.
Now, is it a particular school or area, or is it scattered? Whether
It's
it be
scattered.
Uxbridge or what, there's no one particular
Yeah,
school that they're gravitating to?
we have students out in Milford, Bellingham, Uxbridge, Northbridge, and one other town.
Whitensville Christian?
That's not a public
It's not a
school.
Public school.
Oh, I know, it's up in Mahar Regional, Orange.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, did we have one go to the virtual school?
and then we have a Greenfield, yes, we do. All right.
Just curious whether it was one town.
Yeah, I don't know these children by name. I know the ones, you know, that I became aware of that we're in. But when I looked at the 78 roster, they're scattered by grades. Some are at the high school level, and some of the names, when I ask the principals, they don't recognize the name, because remember what happens sometimes in school choice? Somebody may live in another town, then they move to Blackstone or Millville, but they want their kids to stay in their previous school. We never see them. We never see them until we get notified by that district that Johnny Jones, who lives on Smith Street, is now attending our school. We never knew who that student was until we get the report, and then we verify it with census data that indeed that child does reside in our town. But the reality is sometimes, and it works the other way too. I had somebody, you know, just recently come in on school choice, bought a property. It's an interesting property. It's a property that spans Uxbridge and Millville. The house is actually in Uxbridge, but the land, so most of the land is in Millville, but they want the child to go to Millville school. So I said, because the house is in Uxbridge, it's school choice. But, you know, so it works both ways.
Is it on the rise, or has this been kind of compatible over the last couple?
Again, I haven't been here, so I can't,
Right, okay.
I can't tell you. The data,
No, it's
the
been an
data
issue.
seems to suggest, you know, that it's crested at a number.
Okay.
And again, the fluctuation has been much more at the secondary level. But again, part of the dilemma is, if a student goes out at first or second grade, generally they stay out until they graduate from the other school. So
And I think we
there are
had
some
talked
children
about-
out there that, you know, the administrators don't know because they haven't been in the district that long.
We had talked, and maybe we can talk about it again in the spring, about doing some advertising of the positiveness of our schools, and trying to maybe at least keep some kids in, or bring some back, or attract from another community.
The survey would be interesting too, just if they would answer or send out.
I don't
and
know if-
Ask them to.
I don't know how much participation you would get if we tried.
But didn't we do
That'd
that in
be
the
interesting.
past? That was one of the
Even the
reasons we put in
78 people.
daycare and we put in football, because those came up on one of the surveys we had done.
I don't think we got a
It
whole
wasn't
lot
the
of
only one, but-
participation, but
Yeah.
We surveyed the students too at one time with the football, or the parents with that, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was separated. I think the regional agreement had the daycare, and then we surveyed for the sports. We surveyed how many people were going to do football, so I don't think there was a reason to gather all that data, but I think if we did send out a survey, I think, depending on where we put it, we would definitely get some results.
Okay.
I believe the superintendent last year gave us a report that showed where what grade levels were affected. And one of the
We
most
had that.
significant one was grade 2.
Two.
I believe the number was 10. And it was, the distribution was Milford and Bellingham was primarily the hit then. This was last year, but I haven't seen that report yet this year. It's usually a little bit later in the year.
I can get you the school choice numbers, I can't give you the names, but I can give you the grade levels and the community that they're going to. All right. So the other revenue numbers are tracking, you know, in terms of what we anticipated, you know, for the budget at this point. So there's no alarms on the revenue side at this point. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. Next item. Here we go. The budget information. And tonight's presentation, again, is budget information. What you have, what's available to the public is not our budget. We're simply developing the budget. Since we are a committee of the whole, this is where we start this discussion in terms of looking at the budget information and beginning to ask ourselves more questions. And I'm particularly as superintendent, as your interim superintendent, I don't have a lot of the history, and I have to ask and rely on members of this committee to kind of share some of that history, as well as, you know, ask questions that I can go back and research and bring back information to you. So, you know, it is a matter of not just looking at the numbers, but it is a matter of understanding a little bit more around the implications for the development of this budget. So you have this memo that I gave you at our first meeting in January in terms of our revenue assumptions. Those have not changed at this point. We have not yet seen the House 1 budget. The governor has a couple more weeks to put that out, but we should see that by the end of the month, which will give us some indication. Again, the enrollment, you know, there will be some adjustment in the Chapter 70 money because of our enrollment is slightly less than it was a year ago. Children equal dollars. When you have fewer children, you get fewer dollars in terms of Chapter 78, in terms of looking at that. We've talked extensively about E&D in terms of what's there, and our grants from the federal government and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We'll get more estimates from DESE in the spring. In the budget process, I will be integrating the budget and the grants so that you have a full understanding of programs that are being funded in our schools through Title I or through special education, which are the two largest grants for the school district. The Race to the Top grants end. There may be some carryover money for next year, but the reality is that grant, which provided particularly a lot of professional development and also for some staff to receive stipends, to look at data and to perform some other tasks that were part of the Race to the Top grant, that will end at the end of this current fiscal year. I have presented to you, and we will have to have a discussion. We are experiencing lower enrollment. I gave you and shared with you the NESDEC numbers. I had asked Dr. Kennedy from NESDEC if he could delve deeper into the Millville numbers. He had indicated to me by email that he would have something to me of Tuesday of this week. I emailed him today, and I did not hear back from him. That's not like Dr. Kennedy, so I'm assuming he's out of the office, maybe ill. But I will follow up tomorrow with a phone call to the office and try to track that down. Because I do think we have to drill into, you know, what is the fuller implication for the Millville numbers as we go forward with that. Our English language learner population isn't, yes.
Do you know from Mrs. Desai how many letters were sent out for?
I'm meeting with her tomorrow.
Okay.
But we are estimating that the incoming kindergarten class will probably be in the 21 to 22 range
Okay.
at this point.
I know the letters went out, so I'm just curious how many That was provided by Millville.
Yeah,
Right.
that's off the census. The
That's
cens-
our base.
That's our base, and then notices, public notices for people that might have moved in, that weren't appearing on the current census. That's a possibility as well, right? But again, kindergarten number is always a difficult number because a child may be chronologically eligible for kindergarten, but a parent may defer, not have the child enter kindergarten until the following year. So that's very important. But we do know the births are down, and we do know that population, at least according to the census, is as small as the current numbers this year. So the next item was the English language learner. We've experienced an increase in the growing population. We currently have a half-time English language learner teacher covering the district, and we are going to have to provide some additional teacher time because the numbers are now spreading across the schools. It was easier when they were located principally at Blackstone Elementary. You could get a lot of utilization for somebody in one building, but now we have some students at the high school to which we've had to hire a tutor in order to cover that, which was not in the budget.
Do we
So
have teachers that are ELL trained across the
We do
grade
not.
levels, or we don't?
we don't. The Massachusetts Department of Education, again, based on the law in the state of Massachusetts, requires now all teachers to get, when they recertify, to become ELL or retail certified.
Right.
The legislature put money in the budget this past year to provide professional development money for schools to start having teachers trained. This is not bilingual education. We're not teaching teachers how to speak Spanish
Right.
or other languages. It's learning the strategies of how to include a child whose first language is not English in their class. So it's more of a strategies than it is language. And the problem is that we are a level 4 school, so the money for training this year really went to level 1, 2, and some level 3 schools. So we were not invited into any retail training because our numbers
Right.
did not put us in that level. We should be eligible for retail training next year, starting on July 1, depending on whether or not the legislature puts the money in the budget to continue that program, to do it. That doesn't absolve us of the responsibility of having teachers with that background when a child moves in. So it's a little bit of a catch-22 in terms of where we are. We are fortunate to have a fully qualified English language learner teacher that works for us half-time that can do the assessments and can consult and help teachers. But we're now finding we can't obviously have her in 2 places at once, and the population is growing.
Do you know what the timeline would be that we would know if we would be able to have access to that money or development, or?
We would hope that the Department of Education would be able to get that information out in the spring. Last year, I was not in this position, but was working with other school districts last year, and people were told in the spring that it was coming, and it was coming, and quite frankly, some districts, were trying to get involved in it and didn't get notified of the seats until as late as August.
Right.
And then to deploy the program across the state, in some cases, trainings were being offered in Lowell, and the district might have been in southern Worcester County.
Right.
So teachers said, I'm not driving to Lowell.
Right.
That's not reasonable. And yet the state said, that's where the training is, and you are eligible for seats to go there. So it was a little confusing last year, and I'm led to believe that going forward, it'll be a little bit more organized. But the answer to your question is, we probably won't know until late spring. But again, I would have to say that this is an area that was somewhat underserved in the retail rollout.
Right.
You can imagine the higher population areas of Lowell, Lawrence, Brockton, New Bedford, Fall River, even Worcester had a difficulty getting teachers to the program. So we're fortunate in our Blackstone Valley superintendent group. Milford has one of the highest ELL populations, and they have a full-time director, and the superintendent there has been willing to let that person help us, advise us, in terms of some of the nuance of the law and some of the nuances of training. So we do thank the Milford schools for sharing their resource with us. But it is, I think, in the budget, a population that we're going to have to address. I can't tell you whether that's going to be an additional half-time teacher or a full-time teacher. It's really something that's evolving. I know it'll be a piece of a teacher because we definitely know we have some students at the high school that we have to provide this service to. The other presenting issue is the world languages at the high school. French, Spanish, world languages. Those are some of the highest class sizes. We currently have 2 teachers there that are teaching a 6th class, which means their salary is adjusted accordingly. That's not giving us the number of sections. And in talking with Mr. Dudak, it may be more advantageous for us to think about converting that, taking those 2, 20% FTEs back, and then hiring somebody in, as a full-time person. But the high school schedule, we need to see how many students are coming as freshmen, so that number is a little fluid at this point, but I'm alerting you to that.
What's the class size range?
The class size range
Right
at this point is in the high 20s. That's a little bit distorted because there are some classes that are at the lower end, but when you average it out, the class size in the academic departments is highest in the world language department to do that. So that's an area that we have to look at in terms of that. We have a position at the high school. We have no librarian, information media person at the high school, and it's duly noticed. We have a library, but we open it with a paraprofessional when that person's available, and we really don't have anybody to consult and work with the faculty and staff, and it's a position we have to talk about in terms of that. Right? The athletic director, currently our athletic director is a teacher, and your athletic director. Mr. Dudak did a survey in our league, and most districts do not have a full-time athletic director, but in some systems the person teaches 1 class. In most systems, the athletic director is teaching less than a half load, somewhere around a 0.4 load. That is probably teaching 2 classes, or depending on their schedule, 2.5 classes. Every school has a little nuance to their schedule. That is an area that I think we have to look at. We have 28 teams, 3 seasons, supervision of coaches, coordination of programs, concussion law, coaching standards. To expect somebody to teach 4 classes and do that is not realistic. Based on the survey, that's an area that I think we're going to have to address with that. The current athletic director is in the physical education department, so obviously we would hope Mr. Silva would stay, but we would probably have to backfill the phys ed department with perhaps a half-time teacher to address that.
Just a point there. I believe that work structure is defined in Unit A agreement. So I think if there's any change, it'll need to be.
It's a stipended position in Unit A?
No, but I believe you'll find the work day might be in there. You may want to just check that. I'm just looking for it now, but I know at one time it was, and maybe that's more language that fell out. I'm not sure. But at one point in time, it was spelled out that the AD had an extra
Prep period.
Okay.
But I'm looking at it now, and
I think he does not have a duty period. That's correct. But the difficulty is that he's attending league meetings and MIA meetings, and we're getting subs in because of his teaching load to deal with it. All right? I'll have to look at it. Thank you for pointing
Well,
out.
I would suggest also that, not for nothing, but, maybe we should also be creative as far as how we establish what the AD is. Because realistically, I don't think there's any parameter, and I know the district got into a situation here probably about 10 or 15 years ago, where there was really no place in Unit A to put someone that was kind of in a semi-supervisory role and also teaching. So I think I just think we need to go slow here a little bit, just to, that we don't open up an issue going forward. So.
We can have that discussion next meeting when Mr. Dudek's here, but I think people just need to be aware that the complexity of being an athletic director in terms of, particularly in our district and many districts, many of our coaches are not faculty members. They're people that come in and coach, and the supervision of those individuals and the requirements, for the coaches to get certified, to go through an MIA program, the monitoring, the process is something that you have to have somebody more than, one period a day, basically being the athletic director in terms of that. So it's a concern to be discussed. In terms of personnel changes, I do want to point out where I'm meeting with the elementary principals and all the principals before our next meeting to kind of talk about, personnel in terms of some additions. I have not brought forward any deletions, from positions, but there are some particularly at the elementary schools, some numbers that we are looking at, most notably Millville. We have, currently 3 sections of 5th grade, and we only have 2 sections of 4th grade. We currently have a kindergarten class that is 21, 22, being served by 2 teachers. That's not realistic going forward to grade 1. And we have an incoming kindergarten class that potentially could be at that same level. So we are going to have, some personnel decisions that we have to address relative to that in terms of that. So when I present the personnel changes, that's why the principals are coming, so they can talk to you about that in terms of some areas that we're looking at in terms of numbers. And also keeping within the district agreement relative to where children can be educated at this point. All right. So the next one is the new contracts and implementation, and I think I've gone over that. In terms of the teacher contract, we are negotiating support contract and the administrators' salaries. In terms of program needs, I have clearly directed the principals to build their budget based on the learning needs of the students. We do not do wish lists. Everything in this budget is based on a need. I will recognize as your superintendent, we may not get all of those things, but they're not being put on the list because we think they're nice to have. We're putting them on the list because we have a student need for these funds and these programs and these items. We may not be able to get them all, but it's not a wish list. The days of developing a budget with a wish list are gone. We have to be able to justify why do we need this, and we are prepared to do that. We are prepared to talk to you about that, all right? The technology and implementation of a technology plan with replacement, I'm projecting no major purchases, principally because we don't have an operating technology plan in terms of where are we, what are we doing, and how are we going to get there. You don't have an assistant superintendent, and that was one of the intended items that the assistant superintendent was going to work on, was a technology plan. I have met with Mr. Tupin to go over our tech needs in terms of maintaining the system and being able to do it, along with some replacement of items. There's always a need to replace some items. But as far as having a big technology vision at this point, we don't have that. And I don't have the capacity in the office to present something, so that's why it's not in there. Because I think there has to be a plan before there's a budget and a purchase. Without a plan, it's a year to recoup and to be thinking about it. Does not mean that we're not going to continue all of the technology that we have and replace those things that need to be replaced. That is the priority. But in terms of a major vision going forward, with the iPad purchase for the whole high school, no. We don't have that because we don't have a vision, we don't have a plan to do that. And without that, it's not fiscally responsible to throw money at something that we haven't really been able to design, develop, and present to you as a part of a plan in terms of that. In terms of professional development, we are continuing the literacy initiative, and we're going to plug the money in so we know where it is in terms of that, and funding for the district-determined measures, which is a requirement from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, teacher mentoring, and funding for school data teams. We currently are funding one teacher, it's a stipend position at each building, to analyze data. They will be coming to you in another couple of months to talk about their analysis. They've been doing this for a couple of years, but they've said they've never come before the committee. I've told them, I want you to do your analysis, and we are coming to the committee together to present an overview of the data analysis from these people. All right? So that'll be in there.
Can I ask you
Sure.
a question about the data?
Yes.
Now, you have a data clerk
Correct.
that's what, it is.
20
Part
hours.
of that funded through Race to the Top, or
It's in the budget. It may have been funded under Race to the Top, but it's currently in
Race
the
to the
budget.
Top's done?
Yeah.
So you have a data clerk, and you also have like an SIS
Yes.
person.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I have a 20-hour-a-week support staff person who is able to get into the state database to help the data team look at data, to understand I'm drawing a blank, Mr. Buckley, on the name of the tool that the department uses to look.
Yeah.
Edwin?
That's coming.
Analytics, yeah.
Phyllis.
Whatever it is. I want to say the cube. The data cube that they have. You pose questions to it, and you can extract data. So we do have somebody, you
Yeah,
know.
I knew you had two. I didn't know how that lined up, because I was
Yeah.
when I left it. Okay,
Right.
thanks.
I do have, you know, in the office, a full-time support staff person who handles all the data entry, you know, for the state reports, the SIMs, the EPIMs, and the reporting, innumerable reports that the department requires us to process in. And we do have a full-time support person, and then we have the 20-hour-a-week person whose job is to assist with data analysis for that. All right. The NEASC, we're starting the process. We have to pay for it. We're required, but it's an expense to do that. Mr. Dudak will talk to you about that. And then adjustments in health insurance. We got some information today from EBS4 and our insurance advisor. They're estimating that the MedX plan is not a one-time reduction. They're estimating that that will continue. And that's good news.
Right.
So we don't have to increase that budget for next January. They're also estimating at this point that our health insurance probably will increase no more than 6%. Could be slightly less. So that's a good number at this point.
They always inflate those numbers every year, and it comes back at 3, and they think they're
al-
heroes.
That's always a starting point, yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, you belong to the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Group, which brokers your health insurance through Blue Cross Blue Shield. And the school district has done everything humanly possible to create a plan that is the most cost-effective. And you really have done a great job with that in terms of that. So we are a Blue Cross Blue Shield product, but it's really through a collaborative or a consortium of communities and regional districts. It's below the GIC rates. It's below the GIC rates, and the service and the programs are, in my estimation, equal or better. So the reality is you're getting a very good product, and we're able to kind of control those costs as a result for that, in terms of that. But obviously, there's a lot changing in the healthcare benefit field. One of the realities is, you know, the plussing and minusing as people retire, and then you replace. The net is where you had one, now you have two. So part of that increase in health insurance is always around the number of adds to the plan as well, and some of the minuses as people leave or retire or unfortunately die. I mean, the reality is our census numbers increase in terms of costs to do that, all right? So in a preliminary sense, you know, these are the big ticket items, the big items. I want tonight to engage perhaps in that discussion of reflecting on your budget overview that the committee talked about in terms of, your assumptions and your priorities and your budget development goals. Clearly communicating and sharing information is at the top of our priority list. That's why I'm presenting this as budget information, and being able to have, a thoughtful and reflective process as we kind of go through it. Conceptually, when I look at the budget, as I said, it's based around school needs or student needs. It's really looking at the big ticket items, what are human capital items, which are obviously our salaries and our benefits. Those are human capital. We are a human capital business. Our biggest investment in your budget is in people, in our support staff, in our professional staff, our teaching staff. We're looking at the other line item, and that is the benefits line item. So there'll be a lot more discussion because that's where the money is in terms of the budget. We need to be sensitive to revenue because we are a regional district and we have to look at those revenue numbers. We have to be concerned about general ed, special ed, and looking for a balance. There's no way that Dr. Haughey or I can give you a special ed budget that will be perfect on July 1, and it'll end June 30 just the way we thought it was going to end. There's always an exposure in special education. That's an acceptable risk that we just have to be aware of in terms of looking at it. What I'm looking for from the committee is, where do you want me to go in terms of helping you look at the budget? In the detail, you'll see that I've listed staff. It's important, not so much the name, but to understand the connection with that line item. It really is reflective of the 25, 35, or 50 people in that building that work there, and the jobs and the things that they do. And the elements is to better understand, why we need certain staff people, whether it's grade level teachers, whether it's specialists in art, music, physical education, or whether or not it's in the area of technology. We have a myriad of staff that perform in the district, and it's important for all of us to understand what they do, and more importantly, why do we need them in terms of providing services. That goes for our support staff, direct support staff to children in the form of paraprofessionals, our custodial support staff to maintain the buildings, our clerical support staff to do all of the work that's necessary to keep the school operating and functioning in order to do that. So it's kind of the big picture. Mm-hmm. What I'm really going to caution the committee to do, don't ask me about the price of a ream of paper, because I don't know. But I know we use a lot of paper, and we need money in a budget for paper, all right? But that's not where the money is in this budget. Over $21 million, it's not in paper, all right? It's in personnel. It's in the larger items in the budget, and that's where we should kind of focus our discussion in terms of relevance, to providing direct services to children. I have one thing in my age. I don't like talking, for 2.5 hours and we net out of the budget $5,000 because we found a few dollars here and a few dollars there. All right? Those meetings will be tedious for you, and they will be annoying for me. Okay?
You don't carry a weapon, do you?
I do not, but I do get annoyed when we spend too much time, looking at small items in the budget. That one of the issues that the principals have had in the past is line items zeroed out that make no sense. You need textbooks. You need instructional supplies. All right? You can't live with zero. That's not realistic. The high school principal came to me and said, I don't have enough money in this budget to pay for the diplomas that I need for the class of 2014, and I have to order them. If I put the requisition through, it's going to be about $300 out of balance. Well, guess what? Everybody in the class of 2014 has earned a diploma, and they will get a diploma. We will spend the money we need to get the diplomas printed and have them available for graduation. That is not good budgeting when we've allowed things like that to happen. All right? So I'm entrusting to you folks as the school committee, because one of the primary responsibilities you have is hiring a superintendent, but it's also dealing with the budget. And I'm here to help you with that process. I'm here to advocate for the needs, but ultimately, you get to question and you get to decide. You get to decide. I just need to know what is the focus, what are the level of questions, so that my administrators, when they come before us, all right, and by the way, when they come, I'm sitting with them, all right, because we're the administrative team, and we're going to talk to you about the budget. And we may not have the answers when you ask questions when they come. We'll come back a second time
I know, I'd like
to
to
give,
see
to give information.
each principal talk about their vision for the school.
Yeah.
Where they'd like to see it to go, where they think education is going over time, and how we're gonna meet that requirement, or, get the programs. There might be some obsolete programs, there might be some new programs that we need. How are we gonna get to where we need to be in 5 years? Instead of just looking at, okay, well, we've done it this way all the time. Thinking outside the box and saying, a little more creative in what we're doing. And we saw it a little bit towards the end last year, I think. Well, we did. When Mike Dudek came in,
You're right,
he
yep.
had some new
That's right.
ideas on changing up some classes, and they were more
Sure.
technology-based. They were definitely, in terms of...
Talked about rigor.
Not the old,
Mr. Buckley said it's the first time I've heard rigor in a long time.
teachers were actually allowed to kind of think about what new, maybe this class is kind of old, nobody wants to sign up for it anymore. This class really can get kids knowing, either employability skills, or I think we talked about financial literacy. There was quite a few things thrown around.
But didn't you just say that was at the end of the process?
It was.
Shouldn't that be in the beginning of the
Yeah,
process?
and- Yes. And so I think they're ready. I think the principals are absolutely ready to have that conversation. I don't think they've been allowed to have that conversation.
And I think clearly they're prepared and come to talk to you about, their needs and their visions, and we will present that. But I also have to say that one of the caveats I've given them is a financial reality.
Well, yes.
So it's not a no, but it is a reality in terms of where we are.
But even
And-
if it's a no this year, it might be something that we're working towards. This is where we want to work towards. This is our incremental way to get there.
As a follow, go ahead.
I was going to say that the process for me coming in April to when we were done, there weren't many zeroing out of line items from the people around this table. I can tell you that right now. I want to go keep harping on that, but we're very prepared to move forward. What you prepared is absolutely wonderful in terms of the detail that you've given us so far. So you can reassure them that it's a different mindset, here as well, and they should be able to prepare to come and feel comfortable and engage in a dialogue around how this district should move forward. You can go ahead, Mike.
Well, as a follow-up on that part of it, with all due respect, in the past, let's not be jerked around by, we're going off on this, in this direction, and then 2 weeks later, we're doing a 90, because it just drives you crazy. And, we go from, making huge cuts to adding more staff back in, and, that was quite the exercise after the election. Hopefully, we don't need to do that. I also like to see us get away from, we always have this argument or this discussion. Is the middle school going to act as a middle school this year? It's a middle school. It's going to operate like a middle school, whatever that means. We want to hear from Justin as to how he's going to handle that. I would like to see some creativity from all the building principals on, like, okay, instead of us going and doing this age-old thing that we used to always do, we're going to take this money and apply it to something that's appropriate. It's all about learning, and I think that's a message we have to give the communities as well as the staff and our administrators, is that we're interested in creating a learning community that will ensure that our children and grandchildren and so forth are successful as we go forward. Knowing full well that we don't have a bottomless pit, but this operation has always been pretty close to the vest, despite what you might think. In the communities, we've kind of like really make the buffalo ride the Indian, so to speak, in an old saying. I think we've really kind of squeezed the proverbial penny out of all the money as much as we can. So, but I'd like to see them say, okay, we want to, this is our approach. So I would say for the first time, probably in 4 or 5 years, you'd actually have a good interaction between us. And I applaud you, Doc, that you're going to sit with them so Bill and I can throw rocks at you and stuff. So it's fine.
Yeah, and again, you've heard the two elementary principals. We're committed to this literacy program. It was not a one-year deal. It's a 3-year program, and therefore a lot of the resources that we have will be committed to that for year 2 and 3. And you need to make that commitment. It can't be done in 1 year. It can't be done in 1 year, and it's expensive to do it in terms of not only the professional development, but the consultant time and the materials. So we're committed to that in terms of that. To the middle school concept, Mr. Cameron will be very articulate. This is a middle school. It is based on a teaming structure, and we're committed to that. There are some things that I know we would like to have in this middle school curriculum. The question is, fiscally, is that within the realm of doing that? I've had that discussion, world language and things like that. I mean, there are some areas that have to be balanced with, we're committed to a middle school 2-team structure, 2 teams at each level. That takes up a lot of the human capital to make that happen. But the payoff is, I think, that the structure, the learning environment, as Mr. Buckley has articulated, is really the essential element there. Making sure that students are challenged, they are in fact exposed to rigor and relevance. Rigor can't come without relevance in terms of their learning. And then we create an environment that students are able to make that transition in their adolescence. That is very, very important as part of a middle school concept. And certainly Mr. Dudak at the high school, he does have a vision for an excellence, for moving the high qualities of BMR forward in terms of programs that we offer, and accepting some of the realities, of being a small school in terms of total student population, and looking at how we can shift and change, faculty based on the needs of students in terms of where we're going. So yes, they look forward to that.
Tim, do you want to go ahead?
You can go.
Other areas that I'd like to have them include when they do come is just kind of fill us in on how things are going in terms of what we talked about last year. We continue to talk about the literacy program, but, Dr. Hawley should come in and talk about all the stuff he laid out last year on the PD in each of the buildings. His relationships with what was the University of Denver and Boston College, and how those things are, I'm interested in hearing how those things are working out and how we're going to continue to move forward, because there's a lot of things like the literacy program that aren't 1-year deals. They have to be building blocks. I'm looking forward to that dialogue a lot. The only other area I want to hear about more, and it's really on your part, is the concept of the theme of custodial services versus maintenance, and how we're going to dialogue with that moving forward, in particularly the town-owned buildings, but really in all the buildings. And that's not an easy discussion, because there's no answer, but I think we have to have the dialogue. Go ahead, Rainey.
I like the way the meetings are going. I think it's very transparent. I'm excited to hear the vision of the schools that are coming, and the principals and administrators and what their vision is. I'm also excited that they have a grasp of their budget, and so they're going to be presenting what they need. And I think it's important, as a parent and I'm sure as part of the staff, to be clear on that personnel, the personnel issues, and the why. I think last year we had a lot of personnel conversations on what's being cut, but not the why. And I think the why is going to be valuable for both Blackstone and Millville to understand why are we having these cuts. And I think it's going to be easier to understand if we have that why. So I think that's really important as a parent, and also, as a committee member, is understanding why this is taking place. Is definitely important, and seeing the administrators and presenting their budget for the first time is exciting.
Great points. Anyone else?
I do have one question, and it's going a little bit backwards, but I didn't want to interrupt you. You said the foreign language classes in the high school were the largest class?
Have some of the largest class sizes, but
In the
not-
high school or in the district?
high school.
Do you know what they are?
I don't have the printout, but we have some for world language classes that are up around 28, 29. Now, we have some that are smaller, but on average, compared to English, math, science, and social studies, their load, their teaching load is the highest.
And it's because there's only two, right?
Right.
Two teachers.
Right, and they're both teaching an extra class. So they're not teaching 5, they're teaching 6.
Right.
And it's
So-
a requirement, well,
Well-
it's a requirement for
Right.
students to take that to go to
Yeah.
college, so.
Right.
And to, provide, for that level of instruction, you've got now 12 sections. At the elementary, we talk about grade level classes. At the high school, we talk about sections.
Right.
How many sections of French am I going to need? But if you're committed to French, and you need a French 4 class, and you've only got 12 kids, you have to run French 4, which then squeezes maybe the French 1 class to be 27. So these are some of the issues that we have to address, in terms of, how do we move forward with that? And again, you point out, some of our departments, because of our school size, are relatively small. We're talking, not talking 8 or 9 staff. We're, in some departments, we're talking about 5, 4, teachers, and they have to share that load.
Well,
for
there's
the
a couple of things we gotta look at. So we've decimated the high school. And if we only have 2 foreign language teachers, that's at 120% of usage. Okay, and we've also have to worry about the fact that we've had such significant turnover. That's not a good message to be, portraying. Now, I'm hoping that the 15 new staff are work out and stick around for a while, but that is a strong issue. And, I think everyone's had a chance to be in the barrel, whether it was elementary, or whether it was secondary, whether it was here. So,
Yeah, and again, this discussion that we have, with the respective principals, a lot of it, particularly at the elementary level, we've talked a lot about the enrollment, but also at the high school, because, one of the issues that I've asked Mr. Cameron to look at, BVT, they're in their admissions process. That will not be concluded until February. That is a significant number for us to look at. How many students are opting to go to Blackstone Valley Tech, hence they won't be coming to BMR? How many students are filing applications perhaps to go to Tri-County? I have one that has requested that. I have not seen a new application for the Aggie, but that time is still open at this point. So, there are some other variables that, that will mitigate, in looking at that, because I think I shared with the committee that, Mr. Dudak was working off one number in the spring for his entering freshman class. He turned around and he actually ended up with like 25 more students than he thought he was going to have in June. We were fortunate that we had a transfer of a teacher from the high school to the middle school. We were able to transfer that teacher back to the high school, social studies, and alleviate some of that, but it did put stress on other departments. And that's an important number for us to look at. And again, when we're here the next time, we won't have an answer to that question at this point. We know historically how many students go to BVT from the 8th grade, but that's a variable. We have a sense of how many students have filled out applications to perhaps go to a private or parochial school. And, we've got to look at the total 8th grade available and think what's going to be the number coming forward. And ultimately, that gets put in the algorithm for how many sections of freshman English am I going to need, in terms of looking at that.
Will it be principals that will talk about the counseling staff within their schools? And how, there was some adjustments last year, and I'd like to see how that worked out, if that's enough. Because guidance, I know at the high school level was gutted
With 2
over
counselors.
the years. And I think the middle school was having issues, and so was the elementary.
Yeah.
So,
We had a discussion at our leadership team meeting this week. Principals have authority over any staff that work in their building. I put on the table that I really want the leadership team to think about the counseling services and perhaps we should have Dr. Hahi as the student services person coordinating that, because we need to step away. It's not a building-based issue.
Right.
It's really a K-12 issue. And we need to look at where are the needs of the students. And if we've got, I hate to say this, too much school adjustment counselor in school X, and we need a little bit more over here, that's the wrong time to ask that question. The real thing is, what are our needs, and how do we deploy the staff to meet the student needs? And so that's a bigger, so the administrators will have a meeting,
Okay.
another meeting, but I put that on the table for us to talk about, because that's a concern. In terms of the demands, we have guidance counselors, we have school adjustment counselors, either whether they're, a counseling or social work background, and then we have school psychologists, which principally drive, a SPED assessment. But we have 3 helping people, if you will, working with the population, and then we have the Mass School of Professional Psychology interns that we've been utilizing this year. In terms of that. And at each level, it's slightly different. At the high school level, it's a lot of career tech in the guidance counseling, post-secondary career guidance kind of situation, but there's a lot of intervention, and we have adjustment counselors, to kind of intervene on that level, so.
Okay, so that whole area is being looked at. Yeah.
We've just started that conversation because it came abundantly clear to me that, we need to think about this a little differently. It's not a school-based issue, it really is a district issue that we have to look at.
Well, by the time they get to the high school, it wasn't a high school problem. Issues with students start long before they get, so addressing them early on.
But those
would be good.
individuals are not trained at a specific, it's not like an elementary teacher who can't teach high school.
Right.
If you're an adjustment counselor, you can work at all levels, and we need to take a different view of dealing with that. Those people will still be responsible to their building principal, but I think we have to kind of do a K-12 look at where are the needs, and the needs will change. And we need to be able to deploy staff based on the needs. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that we have any staff that has nothing to do. They're all very busy
Yeah.
in meeting the needs, but sometimes we have to step back and take a district view of how do we staff and deploy and think about
Well, I
those
think that
issues.
comes from seeing the vision of what,
Well-
an overall view, instead of always looking at
Yeah.
putting out fires.
Okay, so I have a sense that you'd like the principals to really articulate, and again, I just want to remind you, you have a strategic plan that has a vision and mission, and that's what they've been asked by me to think about in going forward. So they're going to be modeling their vision around your vision and mission. We're going to be looking at them talking about their programs in the current sense, and also talking about what they see as some of the critical things that they need to move forward. Understand within the context that we're committed to some multi-year programs here that we need to be engaged in, and really to kind of focus, as it was said, on our learning community and maybe being creative, and then you want to really look at student needs, current needs, and projecting and going forward. Does that capture a sense of where the principals need to be? And again, they will come, their numbers are there, but I'd like the discussion to be about what do the numbers represent, because that's what I'm going to be asking them to talk about. All right? In terms of that. So that you have a clearer sense of the school program that they're ultimately responsible for leading and managing at the site in terms of that. All right? Any other pieces of information? I heard Mr. Chaplin ask about custodial and service and maintenance, and let me run that around, because I have not charged the principals with doing that.
And it was more from you. It wasn't
Thank
really
you.
them. It wasn't really them.
Okay. To kind of take a look at that, but yes, I can put some thought and effort into that as we go forward. All right. Any other questions on data? Do you understand this format? I know Wendy brought to our attention the way that Bridget was scanning it in, it was hard to read.
It's much better.
So she worked with the copy machine and was able to reconfigure it to send it to you in a portrait landscape, so it's a little easier to read. But again, if you would like hard copy, it's sometimes at a meeting it's a little easier, but
Mine's still.
you just let me know what works for you.
There should be another one.
all right?
There's two of them that were sent. One
What
with
works
the
for you?
basketball.
I thought I opened them all, but I probably missed it.
Yeah. But when the principals come, the document will be the budget based by their building, all right?
And that'll be next meeting?
Yes, the
Okay.
next meeting will be the high school
Great.
principal and the middle school principal, so you'll have two budgets, budget information, one for high school, one for middle. It will not have health insurance, because that's part of the district view, all
Yep.
right? And, you know, so,
Will we have another early start?
yes, all of, if you recall, we
Okay.
agreed on our meeting schedule that we will get together on the 23rd of January at 6:30. There will also be a regular agenda that we'll get rid of, try to move through quickly. And then under the report of the superintendent, the first item will be the principals.
Okay.
All right? And then on Thursday, January 30th, is another budget meeting. That is not a regular meeting, so that would be, the elementary principals will be here to discuss their budgets. And then on the 13th of February, we'll have a regular meeting, and then Dr. Hahi and technology, we'll take those two pieces. I have to do professional development, I've got to slip that in. I'm trying to put that back at the building level, but the tradition here has been out, so, you know, that's something I need to, you know.
Well, I certainly think it makes sense if the principals are looking, and we're talking about their vision and where they want to go forward, that what parts of professional development have to support that. So it would make sense. Certainly, at a district level, there might be some issues, but I think
Yeah,
it makes more sense at the.
It went to who was the controller, the budget manager, if you will, for those dollars. Right now, I approve all those requisitions. And some of it because the literacy piece involves technically three budgets. And you all remember that we do an AFM and a JFK budget? Took me a while to realize that. Okay? We have an AFM and a JFK budget. It's still Blackstone Elementary, but Carol will address them, but we do break it out in our budgeting.
Is there a
for that.
reason why it can't be?
Does it still make
Well, it's
sense
the
to be
way-
doing
The way it
that?
lines up, so that, like, 08 and then 15, or whatever the
Oh, it
designation
would,
is.
you
So,
wouldn't be able to,
you know, if you recall, there used to be two principals there.
And the buildings are listed separately with the Department of Ed.
right.
So,
I think that's,
but
Leave it the way it is.
anyway, she'll be prepared to kind of walk through, but we'll do the crossover, you know, with that in the general sense and in the,
You know, you probably should have
Micro
selected a different color for the AFM roof, so you could basically change.
Yeah, two buildings.
Just saying.
that's funny.
any other input? Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Again, it's
Great.
very important. I know this is new for you, but it's very new for the principals. And, you know, I want to encourage them to be open and candid, but I also want them to say, I don't know the answer to that, and it's perfectly acceptable to then come back, you know, either through me or through their coming back to the committee to talk about that in terms of looking at their budget. And again, that's there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. So we'll move to subcommittee reports. Just going to jump around to a couple of them, a couple big ones. Superintendent search, Diane, Erin?
We sent over our superintendent search committee list to NESDEC, and.
Did you send that to us too, just to see who's?
Yeah, we
who's
did
on
miss
it?
the students, so we should
I
have
was
asked
just
them.
thinking
As soon as they left, I was like, oh, we still need a student. But we did put together the list, and
So they're missing from the list, but, you know, it looks like we have a nice variety. We have some great parents, support staff, we have.
Is there anybody we're
exactly-
missing?
well,
We
the
have to
question.
appoint them?
I think you charged the screening committee with setting that up.
Okay.
You named the categories. We had the general discussion, so I'm not sure.
Right,
I
yeah. we
didn't know if the names had to come back for approval here.
My recollection is you
Just
charged that off to the,
Just asking.
no, it's fine.
Is that a public
don't think I
record?
knew
Can they
any.
announce them now, or is
We,
that?
I said the ones we had last time, so I'll gladly share this.
You
Yeah.
sent them to,
Um,
did we
Because
get them?
I don't remember
Did
getting
we
them.
ask Bridget to post it on
We can
the
get
website, the search committee? We can do that.
We can do that
Yeah.
now.
Mhm.
Yeah, the people that
We're actually on it.
expressed
Right, yeah.
interest?
I don't
Okay.
I don't recall getting it.
That are on- I didn't
No,
get,
I don't think it was sent out.
No, we just
should
sent
get
it
it out.
to
Yeah.
To
NESDEC.
NESDEC. And just remember, these were people that we invited with a drafted letter that,
Fine.
you know, and they came to us. So for the school committee, it's obviously Diane and I. Support staff, we have Karen Baralt. Teachers union is, I think that's listed wrong. I think that Kathy Jones is she the teacher union or the Millville?
Yeah, she'd be.
She's teacher union.
Sorry. Millville public official is Mr. Jerry Finn. He was sent to us from the selectmen. Blackstone public official is Mr. Bob Dubois. The student rep is empty. We were going to invite.
Well, I think they talked about it, and then they
Right.
said,
We just
they were a
didn't.
little hesitant, so I think we just asked Mr. Dudek to find somebody. If it's not them, to find
Let me
somebody.
get school counsel or
Yeah,
somebody.
yeah.
Administrator is
about,
Mr.
With all
Duda.
candor, you may want to have
I was just
an
thinking-
underclassman, because these folks are leaving.
Foot and a half out the
You
door.
know, so you may want to look at a sophomore or junior or something like that.
I'll ask Mr. Dudak to approach student council for,
Ancient Valley
There's no
kid.
time.
how's that?
What is he, a son?
Great.
Perfect.
Isn't his license yet?
My son
Probably
was
a
thinking
junior
of
would be
higher.
best.
Kicking butt.
Like his mother? Like his mother?
I forgot where, administrator, Mr. Dudek.
What's that?
The PAC, the CPAC for special education representative is Jen Dean Wing. MESPA is Kathy Stearman. BEPO is Michael Andu, and the middle school is Joe Starnes. So
Great.
we have a nice.
We did come up with, I hadn't realized there was no parent organization at the high school level.
Yeah.
So there was no parent, there were no invites to them.
But I think we said that we were doing a student from that, but we did
Yeah,
have
yeah,
someone
suggest
express
that maybe
interest.
Mr. Dudek has a member of his council that could be.
Well, someone
Be
came
interesting.
and contacted him to request to be on,
Oh, great.
out of just the
Who's that?
promotional
A
material.
name wasn't sent to us.
I don't have the
We
name.
actually got an email
I
from
meet with him
Bridget.
tomorrow at 8 o'clock, so I've
Yeah,
got 3 items. for
I
him
just
to-
got notice that a person was interested and had called, so.
I think we're still trying to figure out if it was a high school parent.
Well, they contacted Mr. Dudek,
Yeah,
so
that's what
I'm
made me
assuming,
assume.
but,
Okay,
Follow up with him on
it's a
that.
good list. And even like, you know, Jen Dean Wing, she's a lot of roles.
She's a selectman.
She's a selectman, she's, I mean, so, I mean, it's fine. Great, okay.
Just remember on because you are a subcommittee of the school committee, you have to post your meetings, but your first order of business is to go into executive section for the purposes of reviewing candidates for the position.
Okay.
But you do have to post them, so
So that is our next, we actually have the tentative dates the dates are set. It's January 21st and 24th. We need to settle the time, and we are assuming this is the place.
yeah, and make sure that we can have this
Right.
area.
And I think we're waiting on an answer from NASDAQ if they are sending out the invites to the,
I sent an email over asking if she had something drafted to say, welcome to the screening committee. Our first meeting is, this is what you're going to be expected, your duties, and that type of thing.
Great.
so even though NASDAQ is running the meeting, we have to open and go into
Correct.
executive session.
because the screening committee is a subcommittee of the school committee. Okay. But again, your first order of business is to go into executive session. You're allowed to do that,
Okay.
all right?
All right.
And you
Great.
need 48 hours' notice, so just somebody, when you confirm
So we
that,
should just send these dates to Bridget?
Bridget,
and-
yes.
Okay.
and she can post it. And I think, you want me to check with Mr. Cameron on the middle school?
Yes.
Because you probably could use the conference room, the committee,
Oh, yeah, it's small enough.
Yeah, well, we're up, I think we're
11 or 12.
Yeah.
Either room.
So,
Okay. All right.
Including NASDAQ is.
Okay. Anything else?
We do need to choose a time too, but
Yes, you have to post that time.
yeah, I would say, let's try to start around 6:30, 6:30.
I think that's, well, is that something we
Early?
can discuss later? No, I think that's
Yeah.
too late. One of them says it's a 3-hour meeting, so 3.5, but we'll talk.
Okay.
6 it is.
You
Well,
just gotta
now,
clear that
okay, now,
so
so
when you
these
post
are
it.
evening meetings, this isn't a Saturday. These are
No,
the
it's an
evening,
evening.
21st
So
and
Tuesday and a
22nd.
Friday.
My
Tuesday
concern
and
is people who are
It
working
did
now.
say some of the interviews could be on Saturday somewhere.
No, I'm just wondering, you probably do want to start beforehand, because, I mean, obviously, some of these candidates, they have a travel, and they probably have obligations the next day.
These first two meetings are paper
Oh,
screening.
paper screen?
Right.
Okay.
Well, the first one's a workshop with NESDEC to, and it was in our timeline. It's a workshop with NESDEC to explain the procedures, develop questions, set the interview schedule, and distribute the applications, so.
Right.
Okay.
But you won't be interviewing candidates until your third or fourth meeting.
And you'll set that up as you go along.
That would be the weeks of January 29th through February 10th, scheduled based on availability.
Right. Great. Okay.
Now, can you just talk about what is the end goal? What's, just for the people at home, what's the date you hope to have it wrapped up by?
February 10th?
No,
They-
I mean,
they come
the
to
hiring, the
us.
whole thing, I have a person
Um,
named, everything.
I thought
That was towards the end of March.
on our timeline from NESDEC, it says March. I think I don't think we ever had an exact date. It says March of 2014.
Mhm.
Well, can we discuss that a little bit, so we can understand? So February 10th, the interviews will be done, the first pass?
On February 13th, we already have a meeting. The screening committee is scheduled to come to our meeting and present to all of us the candidate list.
Okay.
And then we take it from there.
Right.
So then, if we
February
look at that.
The 3 or 4 names.
The following week is vacation.
Right.
Mhm.
So that's a bye.
They already accounted for that.
So we would be looking at the last week of February into the first week of March, probably to do
Correct.
odd work.
Yep.
Correct.
So would it be out of the ordinary to say that we're gonna extend an offer, or we're going to name a candidate, no later than, say, the 15th or so of,
You know, as Dr. Betancourt said, it's a fluid situation,
okay.
Yeah.
because, you know, there are variables that you don't control.
Well, I'm just saying, okay, so do we think we have a superintendent named and identified in the
Ideally, I think
April
you're,
1?
I think March 31st, because if you look at this timeline, they accounted for vacation. February 24th through March 7th is finalist visits and interviews with the school committee. March of 2014 is visits to the finalist districts.
Okay.
Also March of 2014, so now I'm picturing the first week. March of 2014, second agreement with the finalists and verify credentials. And then, again, March of 2014, it says select superintendent. So
Okay, so
I just
we're-
think I
March.
think we're past the
timeline.
End of March.
15th, but
Yeah.
by the 31st.
Middle of the latter part of
Just
March,
so that
most
people
likely.
see.
yeah,
at least
and
that
realistically,
this is the-
you're talking about a special school committee meeting to interview.
Right.
Yeah.
The
And that'll
Senate-
have to be a public session. and-
Oh, yes. At that point, again, depending on the candidate pool, it could be 2, 3, you know, possibly no more than 4. Remember, Dr. Betancourt said.
Mhm.
But again, that all depends on
Right.
the candidate pool to do that. So,
Great.
Just
I'm
one
gonna-
last thing, I'm sorry. Michael had sent out a job description, I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at it.
You did?
Send it to all of you, I believe.
Yeah.
Or maybe I might have just sent it to you and Perry. I'm sorry. I might have just sent it to you and Perry,
Yeah?
maybe Bill.
I kind of thought everybody
I got
got
it.
it, but I don't know. So I,
I know I didn't get it.
Well, now we're even. I didn't get-
So-
I didn't get the other- But no, yeah.
maybe we can send it out, make
Send it
sure
out,
everybody
everyone look
gets
at
it, and then we can be prepared to discuss the next time.
Okay. I'm going to skip over some things.
And thank you for that, Michael.
Oh, you're welcome.
Um, Public relations, everyone got my email in terms of the informational email. What are people's thoughts
I just-
around it?
I just have one question. I like the idea of going to walk through the buildings. I'm concerned about the Saturday. Is there any way we can put out maybe a questionnaire, or when are people available to do this walkthrough, instead of, given the time that's available, a nighttime might be better for the people that we're trying to get into the buildings to look?
I mean, it's harder if people want to look around the buildings, outside the buildings, it's better to do it during the day. When, you don't know what activities are going on at night, basketball's going on, it could still be going on, but I think.
I'm just thinking Saturdays are really difficult, but,
Yeah.
just,
families, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, parents, but we also want the FinComs of both towns to involve the
Mhm.
selectmen.
It's
if
for, but it
appropriate.
is for everybody. I
And,
do
you
want
know,
to,
that was one of the things, and then Saturday, like Bill said, at least it's bright out. If there's any questions, concerns, you can kind of see it in an operational standpoint rather than,
No,
at night, everything's kind of,
thought,
whatever.
Dark and gloomy.
doing like some open
and I think if we
houses.
market it, if people can do it, they can do it. I think we just go with it. It doesn't mean that we can't do it again next year and so forth. I just think it's a good bridge in terms of right before public hearing, the month before public hearing, that we made this effort to get people in the buildings, and we can talk about, hey, the fridge here, we're fixing the hinges, or whatever.
Well, I think certainly you have some people that have been through the buildings a lot. If their children are, depending on what building they've been in, they might not have an interest in it, but certainly some of the community members that maybe haven't had kids here for a while or are looking at our schools.
Is this something we could videotape?
Sure, we could do that
Put
too.
on, put on the town websites?
I think we could absolutely, we could put it on,
On cable.
we could put it on anything. I think we do it live, and it could, people that can't do it, we can have posted the video of it. I think that's a great idea. Any other thoughts? So do we want to set some time, Saturday, middle of February, or?
You're talking February?
I mean, I was only thinking the
Saturdays?
first couple of Saturdays before vacation.
When's our public hearing?
I'm sorry?
When's our public hearing?
March.
End of
March
March.
15th, around there. We
What are
could
the
do
first
last
two sad what are the dates on that?
What, for
First.
February?
Two sad dates in February?
We haven't set them yet. You're thinking what? The first would be the
First and 8th.
1st and 8th, or 8th and 15th, whatever you're thinking.
15th before vacation, people will be
Yeah.
taking off.
Vacation, yeah.
I mean, we could do the 1st and the 8th of March, and that would be really close to the public hearing, which isn't
Are you
necessarily
gonna
bad
have two
thing.
Saturdays?
Yep, there's gonna be one for the elementary schools and one for the middle and high school.
Well, the thing with March is you might get a better chance of better weather.
Mm.
You never know.
Yeah, I just think, I'm open to whatever. I just think we should do it. We can set whatever date we want to it.
Good idea.
February, March, does it?
What do people,
I'm leaning towards March.
okay, 1st and 8th of March?
I think March gives us more time to plan it and get the word
And
out.
market a little bit, and
There are a lot
and
of-
get some punch lists going. We'll we met with
Superintendent
Talk
stuff
it out.
going on.
stat, with the
Mhm.
principals by then.
Vacation.
Okay, all right, so the 1st and 8th of March? Two Saturdays?
March 1st, March 8th, cool.
Okay. Budget, quickly, we do have a scheduled meeting for next week, next Thursday, this time, for the budget subcommittee to meet with the various members that have been coming. We've only been getting 3 or 4 people coming, so I think it's good to kind of go through, we can go through some of the, more of the budget stuff that we've gone through tonight, and maybe even some of the 2 budgets that we have here, so that's where we're at with that. Let's spend a little bit of time on the regional agreement for a minute. And I know last month we talked about seeing the pulse of the committee in terms of that. So I'm going to turn over to you guys initially, and then let's ask some questions of the committee and get some direction.
Okay. What Erin and I have done in the last few months is actually talked about a goal on why we're having a dialogue on the regional agreement, what's the problems, and why we're opening up or actually trying to look at the regional agreement, advantages and disadvantages to that, and where we're headed with a time, with an end time for the study. So the goal, and please jump in for whatever reason, but the goal that we're talking about is to provide an equal opportunity for all children to receive the best quality education in the district that we can provide for them. The problem, as we heard tonight multiple times, is the fact that we have declining enrollment, and the class sizes are not equitable across the district. We're not utilizing our staffing to the best way that we can based on the setup right now. And looking at our budget and how lean it is, I think it's definitely worth looking at. The regional agreement, realistically, it's one big line that we're talking about. And there's disadvantages and advantages to regionalizing the elementary schools. And this is clearly for discussion purposes and for the study. And like I said, we're just starting. So I'd like to go over the advantages of regionalizing the elementaries and then the
Can I
disadvantages.
jump in?
Sure.
First of all, we are already regionalized.
The elementaries.
No, we are already regional. This is the Blackstone Millville Regional School District, pre-K to 12. We have one superintendent, okay? So that's a misnomer. It just so happens there's a clause in the regional agreement
Right.
that says that the elementary children will be educated in each of their towns, unless extenuating circumstances,
Right.
like if a loss of a building, or if there's a program only running in one town, then we can move them over there. So I really want you to kind of get away from saying that we're going to regionalize we're just looking at the appropriate use of facilities, or so, because this kind of confuses a lot of people. I thought we were regionalized. We have been since July 1st, 1982. And I think that that's important for people to realize that if Millville had never built an elementary school and was at Longfellow, they could have been down at JFK or AFM. There's nothing to hold that to.
I like that, you know, utilizing the facilities. And we have met with Dr. Davis and
Mr. Gould.
Mr. Gould.
Mr. Gould, thank you. And he already made that very clear. It's only one, it's
Sentence.
one sentence that we need to change to utilize our facilities.
Certainly.
He didn't say it, but I like that. So, I mean, we do know that it is that only that one little,
Because in reality, for 32 years, we've taken the increased reimbursement that K-12 regionalization got us. And a guy by the name of Tom Cullen fought for that, and basically said and I won't belabor the point, but in '81, when 2.5 hit, the schools ate all the cuts with the support that we would go to regionalization and able to put the schools back together in '82 and '83. And we lost a lot of good staff members. Dennis Heeman, your brother was here at the time, all because of 2.5.
And I think at that time, this was the sticking point for Blackstone and Millville, and that's why the clause went in there. This would not have happened if they didn't get this clause in here, because they were fearful that their young children would be shipped all over the place, that the agreement was, we'll pass it if Millville goes to
Well, the
Millville,
other
Blackstone
thing-
goes to
And
Blackstone.
there was
So
other concerns as well, that, you know, that
it was a
Blackstone was
stickler.
afraid that they were going to have to build a school for Millville, you know, and
well, I
things
think
like
we've
that.
proven that they don't have to, and we
I
can
understand that.
certainly
But
figure
I'm
out
just
how
saying back to
to
that
utilize
time.
that facility.
So go ahead, Renee.
So we looked at possibilities of creating an early childhood school and an upper elementary school. So we weighed the pros and cons to both. And again, I can't state enough that this is just a study. It's clearly for discussion. And this will be a building document, so it's nothing that can't be changed. But if we were to look at something like that or that type of model, the advantages to that is when whole grade levels are together, in a building, it supports PLCs, professional learning communities, common instructional planning times, team teaching when it's appropriate, analyzing student work and assessments, and that's across the district. It's not just Millville, or it's not just Blackstone. You're looking at a whole group, and the group as a whole. Another advantage is balancing class size. Again, we're talking about kindergarten in the Millville Elementary being 11 and having to have that discussion about where it's headed because of declining enrollment. And balancing that class size across the district and managing the professional staff within the classrooms. Another advantage would be students would unite younger than 6th grade. When grade levels are united, you can do field trips, and all the 5th grade went on a field trip, all 3rd grade went on a field trip, versus Millville went on a field trip here, where Blackstone went on a field trip there. The possibility for more creative scheduling, specials and curriculum. That's another one. Possibility of adjusting staffing, therefore cost with professional and support staff, consolidating the efforts would be an advantage. Intergrade collaboration, going from 4th, 5th, and 6th, not 6th, but 3rd, 4th, and 5th, there's that collaboration piece when you're a 3rd grade teacher and you want to look ahead at what 4th grade is doing, having that group together, and analyzing just data based on 3rd, 4th, and 5th, having them all together is definitely an advantage. And the focus, each school will be able to have a focus on one specific developmental stage. So instead of having K all the way to grade 5, the developmental stage would be a 3, 4, 5 and a K1, 2. Right now, the principals, the specialists, special ed, art, music, phys ed, teachers, and other elementary schools, they're all kind of all over the place based on the needs of the students, where, you know, you could have a special educator focusing on strictly K1 and 2, and a special educator is focusing on 3, 4, and 5, and really honing in on those their specialties. And with only 3 grade levels in the school, specialists can focus, which is what I just said, they can focus on those 3 grade levels. And resources and staffing from Title I can benefit from both Millville and Blackstone. And correct me if I was wrong on that, I wasn't sure on that one. But there are disadvantages. Along with the advantages, there's disadvantages. The disadvantages are class sizes. You don't know where that's going to go. It could be a disadvantage if we don't. It could be a disadvantage if we do. So that's one of those fluctuating concerns. Logistical and financial implications, just understanding how it would actually take place. Travel time from one town to the next, your child being on a bus from one end of Rathbun Street to Millville, you know, just having that discussion on busing. We'd lose, in some instances, the opportunity for older students to be role models for the K1 and 2 kids. I know that my son has a 5th grader that comes down and reads to them, so, you know, that's something that there wouldn't be if we had that particular model. Parents, again, in the role of a parent would have, you know, may have kids that are in the K1, 2 building and also the 3, 4, 5 building, so therefore they'd have to figure out logistically how to pick up both children or, you know, their children in general. It would also, another disadvantage would be volunteering and wanting to spread out their time for volunteering in both buildings. For the students, lack of familiarity. Having 2 buildings, two sets of staff could create some safety issues in getting used to the change from one building to the next building. They do it from, you know, 5th grade to 6th grade and then from 8th grade to 9th grade, but looking at that younger group, that would be that could be a disadvantage. I'm not saying it is. Change in stability, especially those students with IEPs and behavior problems, trying to adjust to that change would be a big thing. New expectations, new surroundings, new culture. It's just a big change, and historically we haven't seen such a big change, so that would definitely be, you know, something that needs to be looked at. And the timeline for the change. We don't want the community to feel that this is something rushed. That's why I continuously say this is a study. It's not something that's going to happen. We could go through this study and at the end the community not feel that this is the best decision for our students. But I think we need to think of the students and be cautious of the building versus the students. We know we have all roof projects, so if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but if these roof projects are going up, that means these buildings are there for 20 years, correct?
Yes.
So it's not about closing schools, it's about, it's the students. Using the facilities, yeah, and getting the biggest, you know, the best education for the students in both Blackstone and in Millville. So those are the advantages and disadvantages. The next steps, I think the biggest one that we've brought up quite a few times is the question of, due to the declining enrollment, how does the committee members feel about the regional agreement and where we need to head? I think we need to get a sense of each committee member and how you feel about the regional agreement and where you see it going, so that we know where our committee stands before we take it to the next level. Bill, we'll start with you.
No, don't stop. No, wait a second. So what have we defined what the next level is?
We have not, because we need to, well, there's a couple there's a couple things we need the committee's help on. The first one is transportation. I know I can say personally that I know nothing about transportation and cost. That's not my, I know that's a big thing. And I think we need the help of the committee to break that down and say, okay, whose specialty is, transportation and understanding to come back to us and say, this is, I'm concerned about creating meetings with constituents when we need to be clear before we enter these meetings, specifically what we're looking for, and being able to hand out that information. I know the first thing on those, when we have those meetings, is going to be, what about transportation? So I don't know about transportation.
What are the
so-
cost benefit, is what you're saying?
Exactly.
As to now versus then. And if it's more, we have to look at that. If it's less,
Right.
well, it's great, but we still have to look at it.
Right,
It's
and
a
I think,
great point.
I think we need to make sure when we do make these meetings and have these meetings, that we come in knowing the information. And right now, we're at a place where we're looking for the committee to help us out with that. Because like I said, I'll be the first one to say transportation is not my specialty. But again, I think we still need to know, how does the committee feel about the regional agreement, and where do you think it needs to go? Because if we don't have all the committee on board, or have the same idea, or relatively close based on the research, it's kind of hard to push,
Okay.
Or put this effort into it going
Sure.
forward.
Yeah.
Without all
No,
eight of
committees
us.
are in flux. We could all be here. There's 2 seats that are open, in April, and there could be differences, but I think, for right now, I think it's a good idea to poll this committee and get their thoughts. I mean, I can go first. I mean, I know there's a lot of fiscal and logistical stuff that can create a little bit of a quagmire between the towns. And I think we have to be clear on that. I think we have to be very clear on that. I'm not really fully clear on that, the downfalls,
Right.
I would tell you, for me, I'm more concerned about the declining numbers in Millville, and how does Millville continue to sustain the cost of keeping a school that is potentially half empty moving forward. And for me, I think, consolidating those, how you just broke that up, pre-K through 2, the 3 grades in each, I like all those advantages. I really do. I'm fiscally, I'm concerned how, 5 years from now, if we don't do this, and the numbers are the way they are, I don't know how you heat that building and continue to contain that cost, unless there's different programming in there. So I think that's, for me, it's a space issue, it's a fiscal issue. And I'm going to say the obvious, there's always been talk of, everyone knows when they get to middle school who the Millville kid and who the Blackstone kid is, especially around math. Because if you have smaller class sizes, you can really, have that. And that's one of the things I think you did say that about the common assessments and so forth in the grade.
Well, I think it's important because you don't want to get to the middle school and have that,
Right.
that varying, I mean, you are going to have that varied level, but I think having that varied level because of towns and not by
Right.
ability, that's concerning. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's based on, class size. I think it's, the smaller the class, the easier it is to.
Sure. Yeah, active learning, I mean, sure, all that stuff. So that's where I'm at. I think we should move forward with getting the information clear, having a clear picture, and us giving as much help as you need around that, and moving forward to explore it with both towns.
And I'd say, from what I know so far, I'm definitely in favor of it. But the big thing is it an educational decision or a financial decision? Obviously, the educational strength should dramatically, overweigh the financial, difficulties. And yeah, you're right, we don't know all the financial,
And I just
factors to it yet.
we just listed the educational variables because
Yeah.
that's what we know. I'm sure if we did it as a committee, the financial piece would definitely be able to be listed as disadvantages and advantages. But, based on, a committee of 2, I think we just went with our, what we know.
And I know, my little baby in Millville, he's not going to go all the way to Blackstone, or Blackstone all the way to Millville. These 2 towns together are still smaller than most towns around. So I know they'll say, oh my gosh, it's going to go from a 10-minute bus ride to a 17-minute bus ride, which is still shorter and briefer than most surrounding towns. You have to face that. We're kind of spoiled here in our little small towns. But I used to live in Blackstone, I now live in Millville. When I sit here, I don't see, oh, it's a Blackstone issue. They're all the same. I've always been thinking that way. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I think all the kids are all of our kids. I don't see a Millville problem or a Blackstone problem. They're all our kids, and they're going to come together in middle school anyway. A lot of these kids are playing soccer leagues together, dance, scouts, everything. I think a lot of the families don't see it as Blackstone versus Millville. Maybe that was the case 20, 30, 40 years ago, but I think some of the newer, younger families, they're intermixed already anyway. So I would think that they wouldn't be that resistant. But again, for me, it needs to be a sound educational decision. And we'll find out about the finances along the way. But right now, I'm absolutely 100% in favor of it.
My turn?
Go for it.
I've long been a proponent of revamping the regional agreement, and there's a couple of reasons why. Most apparently that it makes educational and financial sense. But what we can't measure and what none of us can measure is the impact emotionally on parents and so forth. However, I think that it's important to include them in the discussions way up front, long before town meeting. I don't know whether you can pull that off between now and the spring, or if it's a 2015 thing. But you really have to get some people involved in that, and then do some research and look at, okay, where you're employed is a good example. Why did Franklin come up with the plan of K-5 and then a 6, 7, 8, those type of buildings? You know what I'm saying? Is it, let's look at how, some of these other towns have approached it. I think all the towns in the area, with no exception, are going to be in the same situation as we are, with some declining enrollment. I don't see any town that's issued a ton of building permits, and when you really look at the census data, the amount of 1 and 2 family households with no minor children is pretty staggering. So it tells you that the real estate's not turning over. From a financial point of view, what worries me is, what does it cost the Blackstone Millville Regional District to educate a child in Millville compared to what does it cost in Blackstone? Is it similar? Is there parity there? Or is it this way? Okay, because you still have to clean the place, you still have to heat the place, and if the place is half empty, it's not efficient. Okay, and I'm not talking about closing schools or anything like that, but I think that there are benefits to really studying this and really looking at that. And we don't know all the questions at this point, but I'm sure there are plenty of parents that probably have a lot of questions, and we need to answer them. We need to answer them truthfully, and we may need to make the best decision for the children. I think a K-1-2 in one place and a 3-4-5 makes an awful lot of sense. I also agree with Steve that these are small towns. For instance, if you lived on Lackey Dam Road in Uxbridge, the Balmer School is much closer to you in Northbridge than the Whiten Elementary School is in Uxbridge. It just so happens that these two little towns are geographically so small. So it's not like this is a big thing. Yeah, sure. If you're coming from Rathburn Street over, okay, you're going to be on the bus another extra 10 minutes or something like that. I think you look at, some experts. I'm not one as far as transportation. How do you relay out the grid? How would you approach it? As far as, busing, what makes the most sense? And, I'm sure, another job for you, but, maybe down the road, this is, I know Monroe at one time did some work in the transportation. I'm sure we could find some people that could help out. and try to see if, if there are any advantages or disadvantages. But I think you need to look at the whole package of that too. But I think, I applaud you, what you've put down for pros and cons, and I think you take it to the next step, whatever that you decide that to be.
Right?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I think you really hit a lot of the, if not all of the important pros and cons. The only thing I would say is don't minimize cultural,
Absolutely.
because, I'm like Steve. I lived in Blackstone for about 10 years and decided to move out to the country. And,
Way out there.
it not being from here, not being from Blackstone Valley, a lot of things are different here. But the water is different. I noticed that. But when I living in Millville, I really get a feel that there's a huge sense of community that centers around the Millville Elementary School. And it goes back to a couple of months ago, I told you I was at the Colonial Feast. I see those seniors there. They are so proud of that school. You think they built it brick by brick. They really take a lot of pride in that. And we don't have a lot of the things that the town of Blackstone has. We don't have a beautiful new library. We have a library that's barely open. Senior Center has had struggles. So I think all of those things really, Millville has become that center of what the townspeople are proud of. And I think they look at that as, from a sense of community, as really being their gem that they want to protect. So I think that you really got to think about that cultural aspect. That said, I think there's a lot of arguments for looking at this and going into it with an open mind. And all the things, the busing, the costs, I mean, the pluses, the minuses, you identified a lot of them. We really need to go deeper into some of those before we go out. I agree that that's the legwork that has to be done. But we do have some transportation experts, it's Tollstones, people like that. I mean, we don't have to just stay with the committee and have us all become experts. Let's use the people who we already have engaged to do that. Some of
Right,
that.
and I think with us saying that we're looking for the committee's, help, is we want to go in with a little bit of research. We don't want, to do a whole bunch of legwork, but I think, when you talk about community, when we meet with the teachers, we're going to talk about their concerns and what are their fears and what are their hopes. That's something that we can do. But we do want to come in with some type of information for them. We don't want to sit in front of constituents and say, I don't know, we're starting from scratch, I don't know. So I think we're just looking for the committee, for, the financial experts on the committee to help us do that and to give us some of that information. The educational, people on the committee help us with that side point. But I think it's important that we get some information and some of the research before we just go gung-ho and say, okay, we're going to meet with the teachers and we don't know where we're headed. So I think some of those questions, I think we'd like to have answers to before we take it to the next level and meet with the teachers and meet with the parents, so that they believe in the process, and then move forward. And you're absolutely right with the community. I actually forgot to put that there was, staff was a big thing. And in just having that community set forth, and has been, in Millville and in Blackstone, that's going to be one of their fears, the loss of that. So, I look at that as an advantage in Blackstone, and, Millville might look at that as a disadvantage. So I think, those discussions are, worthy of, meeting and having that dialogue. But I'm wary of going into these meetings without the committee's help, financially, because that's not, my background. So I think, that's just what we're looking for, is just, a couple bullet points on, the financial
I think when it's
aspect.
been done in the past, I was one of those parents when Tony Harvey and Everett Campbell were presenting that they were just and Kim, they were just going to pick and choose, at every grade level.
Or
And I
their
was like,
answer
"Wait a
was, I
minute."
don't know.
I was like, whoa, what? And they didn't have any information. They
Transportation,
just
I
said,
don't know.
this is really important, and we're going to have this done.
Right. And how did you feel as a parent?
There was
when
no
that-
way in the world they were doing it.
Right.
There was no way in the world, because they didn't really have a plan.
Right.
So I absolutely agree. We need to have as much of our ducks in order as we can, because there's a lot of intangibles that we're not going to be able to answer, and that's okay, and getting their feedback. But I do think we have to go in and present real data, and I think we have real data now with NESDEC in terms of numbers.
Right.
I think we have.
We have the numbers, we have the declining enrollment, we actually have the permits that are out. We have all those next steps. I think it's the financial piece that's really sticking me, and again, because I'm not the professional with the
Well,
financial
you're
piece.
gonna
So I
have to look
think,
at, you're gonna have to look at the transportation, that's probably one of your biggest
right,
unknowns. And the other thing is, when they built this building, which opened 10 years ago, the first step was a space needs study.
mhm.
Okay, so that was combined community members from both towns, and Leo Trotter and Paul Mercier were on this committee, and they were the co-chairs, and they established the need. Okay, then that grew into a building committee,
Mhm.
and if the first whack was going to be an addition to the high school. And then it was concerns about the loss of the fields there, and then having so many kids in that one location, it really didn't, you know, then a little thing called Columbine happened about that same time, so that's, but anyway. You know, so you got to take those baby steps, so you establish the need. So you've established some positive things. Yeah, I think you need to get more community people involved in just discussing it in an open forum. And, you know, I think the finances, you know, we can look at without too much trouble and answer any questions that you may have, and whether, if there are advantages, if there are disadvantages. You know, we don't know this. We also have to look at, you know, what makes sense, what makes the most sense for, you know, the building and what population gets put in what building and so forth. So I think there's a lot of that unknown stuff. But, you know, whatever you think the next step should be, you know, but, you know, you need to involve the community, and especially the parents that are impacted by it,
And I think,
so that the cultural and emotional issue can be at least addressed.
and I think I would involve the community in helping with the research, because then they'll trust the research because it came from the committee. It didn't come from us. We're not presenting this as the best possible. You will find you probably will have people in the committee, in the communities, that will understand transportation, that will understand finances, that, you know, there's educators out there that, you know, not just around the table, not just teaching in our schools. And so that is probably one of the better ways to get the buy-in. It's not a committee of us coming up with the best possible plan and
Well,
presenting it.
and I want to make it clear that that's not anything that I just said. I think it's important to get the community involved, but I think it's important as a committee, that we at least come with something, and not just go to an open meeting and say, hey, let's just brainstorm a whole, I think it's important to have, you know, a goal in mind. I think it's important to, you know, have an idea of what's the goal of this meeting. And definitely the community members are the architects of this project. It's not the committee members by any means, but I think it needs to start with us.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I think, when you said that, I showed up at that meeting with Everett Campbell and Tony with like reams of research about how you can't transition kids and so forth. And they were like, oh my gosh. But I think you're right in terms of we need to have the starting point and not be in limbo, move forward. We have a lot of data, and we'll throw some scenarios out there about finances, you know, and look at A and B, stay the same or differently, and we'll map that out. And then I think we can have some initial meetings. Hey, this is where we're at.
Right, and I think that's the exciting, you know, thing, is to have that those initial meetings with, you know, the staff members and the parents and, you know, anybody who's involved, really. But I still think we need to go with just a little something and a goal in mind for those meetings.
I think it's a great idea, educationally sound and backed and everything, and that would be great to have the 3 buildings and early literacy and things in one building and such and going. But to put that all together and then say how educationally it's sound and how we're behind it 100%, and then find out financially there is no way that it would ever work, would be saying one thing, we think it's a great idea, we're in charge of the education, and then say, but we can't fund it.
Right,
And
that
it
needs to be,
kind of sad. So, I mean, if the moment in time was now, and we looked at putting the children, taking them and scattering, and just say, this is what it would look like. We don't know 5 years down the road. But the big thing is the busing, and I can't imagine that being a stickler on on that, that's the only.
But there's also fiscal issues in terms of the 70/30, and it would change for the buildings, and it would really change the picture of how maintenance is done, you know, in each of the buildings.
Right.
I brought that up in terms of both the buildings that the town owns, but those are factors and layers that we definitely have to put in
You have
there.
to
So
look in there.
I think we have some, we get a picture together.
You're right.
You have all the educational points, we come up with some the fiscal points of stay the same and different, and we have some initial meetings, you know, and it's not gonna happen before we have a superintendent, okay, hired.
Oh, right,
But
right.
I think.
But the study started, and,
Sure.
you know, we do have, you know, an end date of, you know, February 2015. I mean, we do have, you know, it's not moving, we're not gonna
Right.
move fast through this process. I know in the past, you know, we you know, it's been said, it hasn't been said, you know, we've had this, and we wanna make sure we're being transparent as a committee, and I think, you know, building that trust is important, and I don't think trying to get it done by March or trying to get it done as fast as we can is not going to serve any good purpose. So I think, you know, having an end date with the hope of it being February 15th, being the research done, not an end result with what, you know, what the end result is going to be, but at least the research will be done, the meetings will be done. But like I've, you know, said, I think before we create those meetings, we need to have, you know, a little bit of research and a reason for those meetings. And then, like I said, the constituents will be the architects behind this whole entire, you know, appropriate use of facilities. I think that is going to be, you know, that's going to be the drive.
Right. And I think you did a great job with the pros and cons, Wendy, already, and Erin.
Diane?
Thank-
Yeah, no, I was all for it. I mean, I'm just saying, I think the whole difficult issue is getting the buy-in. And so how to process and go through that. Also, when you get to town meeting, and what's happened in the past is it wasn't framed out enough, and not only that, you don't have to have, once you come up with the plan, also the rollout and how it's all going to work, because that's really what affects the students and the parents is, you know, are we going to, you know, rebrand a school? Or is, you know, when we're moving new students to Millville, all of a sudden you've got people, you know, you're in our school now. No. And coming up with that whole and changing, it's changing the culture. And with that is, I mean, that's like,
It's
you
mindset.
know, carving
And
in
it's
stone.
it's really, it's a political campaign. It is. And to
It's a
get people
grassroots
behind
campaign.
your campaign, you know, you need to be able to sell it and market it and execute it. And, you know,
Yeah.
they need to be a part of it. And that's completely understood. We understand that completely. But I think, like I said, if the next step is to sit down and actually, you know, hash out some of the financial, like I said, because I don't know the financial. And what I'd also be willing to do is put on Google Docs pros and cons and financial, just to have some, you know, you can throw some, you know, pros and cons out there to get us thinking, you know, in the financial aspect of it, you know. If that'll help, I don't mind doing that on,
Okay.
you know.
All right, great.
So that's where we're at.
Great job.
Job.
All right, the others can wait. In terms of those, unless someone has any pressing for facilities or policy review or strategic planning.
Well, I'm glad you asked. I have some stuff just to hand out. I'm not going to go into the detail you went into.
Good to go.
But just because I want you guys to have some time to review this, and I've been working on it for a while. It took, here, hand these down.
How many trees you cut?
Too many.
It was really the baseline facilities assessment that Dr. Hockey and I have to get with Dr. Hockey and find who the exact point was that pulled this information together. But I just kind of reformatted it a little bit, give you the information on the key there.
I got one. Thank you.
And then I just broke it down into tabs, because I looked at this as, one thing I did think of as we were talking earlier about the food service, is that we really don't go into enough detail in the kitchens. It's kind of a quick down and dirty assessment, but I like it from the perspective of, it's a good starting point. It's historical, so this goes back to mid-2012. I think it's something, you know, you can see I put 2014 there. I'm thinking maybe the goal would be to do something like this every couple of years, have a small group of people who go out and do a good assessment, and to really develop that baseline to see what needs to be done short-term, and you can see some of the numbers. And I can't talk to whether or not some of these are correct. I can tell you there's some roofs that were in bad shape as far as the assessment went, so we think we got that one focused correctly.
Now, who actually did this evaluation in 2012? Who is the group that did that?
I have to develop who the team is. I have to get with Dr. Haughey.
I think it was the
Because
custodian, I mean, the
I
custodians
think it was the
are-
custodial staff and
They
probably
did it?
with input
Okay.
from the administrators, but I don't know who. Because I'd really like to have names there, because what would be really nice is to see the continuity, if we could have the
Yeah.
same people doing those assessments year after year. But I think it does give us, it can be a tool that can help us to develop short-term and long-term facilities improvements that we're going to have to make.
Right.
You know, seeing the things that happened
Yeah.
in the food service area is just, you know, you can't react to something like that and be able to fix it. Now, if we have those issues in other areas, you know, like heating and ventilation, you know, water systems, things like that, this huge money that we could have exposure to, that maybe doing something like this on a regular basis will give us that visibility sooner than being reactive and having to deal with a situation like we have.
Right.
So that's, I just wanted to get it out to you guys today, just to be able to take a look at and think about it as a tool moving forward.
I think one of the things that might be good to add, as you make another pass-through, is the age of some of, you know, the items, and what's
Yeah.
the use,
Yeah.
in the
Useful
the
life.
the
Yeah.
useful life, yeah. And that way we could start to set out a timeline.
Yeah, because I think, you know, when I was in the finance committee in Blackstone, I knew every year the police chief was coming in and said, you know, I'm on my 4th year of my server, the 5th year, we need to buy one. So there was definitely you know, we knew when that was coming. We know when we had to buy an ambulance, we know when we had to buy whatever. And I think we need to have some similar to that in terms of just the maintenance of it. You know, and again, we haven't had a maintenance budget. We've had a reactive, we'll fix it when it breaks budget. And I think that's why it's important to kind of have this thing, you know, go out. You know, we know we have the cooler and the hinge, you know, and or we know stuff we have to maintain, you know. So this is, it's a great starting point. Thank you.
What?
That begets the question about maintenance versus cleaning.
Custodial.
I knew you.
Yes,
So can we just pencil that in as something we need to,
I did already.
oh, okay.
You
Oh,
did.
Sorry,
You were
I must have been out to lunch, I guess, at the time.
Okay, public forum, seeing that there's nobody, we've waited everybody out.
Wore 'em down.
Success!
Committee forum.
I'll go first. I'd like to thank and congratulate Mrs. Conrad for taking the AP Bio class this past week to the Biotech Futures field trip. We just approved that tonight, by the way.
Great.
But they went on Tuesday, but that's okay. But
We approved it, huh?
yeah, but they went to Bridgewater State. It was a fairly small group, but what they did is they spent the day at the Bridgewater State laboratories, which is great for the high school kids. It's just great exposure, seeing what's out there, you know, exposure to what a college campus is all about. But they listened to some great speakers, and they saw various different labs that were involved with biotech technology and things like that. They saw some cancer drugs being developed, and it was just an exposure that, you know, most high school kids don't have. And I'd like to, you know, thank Mrs. Conrad for putting that together.
Okay, I did miss one person, and thanks for reminding me, Wendy. We also lost another teacher since the holidays, Mrs. Susan Decker, well-known reading teacher at JFK, and a lot of children benefited from her wonderful skills, and she succumbed to illness here at a fairly young age. She was in her mid to late 60s, I guess. So our thoughts go out to the Decker family. With the approval of, or with our bonding, or going to borrow the money based on whatever Millville winds up doing, you know, it's interesting to note that it's a $1.5 million cost, but you know, the net will be around $600K to the town, probably bonded over 20 or 30 years. So that's a pretty reasonable amount, especially with the amounts of what interest is presently now. And I want to congratulate the snowman down the end there, and that he didn't pull the plug on Thursday. He showed wonderful leadership there, and I'm sure that all the parents and children, although they might not be very happy with you today, they will be come June. So, congratulations.
Good point.
Great.
Just have to remind him in June.
Do you really call yourself the Silver?
You're out one day.
I was dubbed the snowman by a first grader when I went to Dover Sherburne explaining what the superintendent does. And I said, I call off school, and he said, "You're the snowman."
Okay.
Moniker has stuck ever since then.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know the story behind
Yep.
it. I've been hearing the snowman. I'm picturing Olaf and
Just a first grader's interpretation of what our
in Frozen,
superintendent.
for anyone that hasn't seen the movie yet.
Over to you.
Oh,
Brian, you good?
Pass.
I'm all set. Nothing, thank you.
I had the really great opportunity to go see Aladdin, put on by the high school students, and led by, I think it was Mr. Angelini. I'm thinking. And, you know, I've been to a couple over the years of drama productions that were very small scale, and so I was not expecting such a great performance and such a wonderful turnout for the audience. I mean, I've been there, there's been a handful of people watching these kids who have worked months. So it was really great to see parents and family, and who knew we had that many singers in our school? So they were really great, and so next time a production, there will be a spring one, I'm hearing, although they haven't picked the play yet. But I would also like to congratulate the wonderful set people that put that together too, so.
And it is being played on Millville Cable. So
You know,
can catch
It
it.
is.
It's
I
limited
was-
release,
I've
but you
seen
can
it.
catch it.
Yep.
I left a meeting and went there, and I didn't see any camera, so I didn't know if they had taped it the day before, but maybe we could get it in Blackstone too.
We'll see what we can do.
I'm all set.
I just want to say Happy New Year to everyone. I wish you all a happy and healthy New Year. And I want to thank all the parents, the staff, the public volunteers that have stepped up to help us with our search for the superintendent. And I hope it's all good things to come. I think we have a great list of volunteers, so
Great.
thank
Awesome.
you.
And I want to, again, congratulate Danny Manning. Back in 2007, when I was running the top soccer program in town, you know, doing soccer with kids with disabilities, he was one of my main volunteers, him and his sister, and he never missed a time all the years we did it. And it doesn't surprise me that he's the quality adult person he was, because he was a top quality teen and adolescent during that time. So I, again, congratulate him. They couldn't have picked a better person. So with that, we have no executive session tonight, thankfully. And I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Greenstein motion, seconded. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Do I need to vote now?